Hello,
Hello.
everyone, and welcome to day 3. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Hello, Majid. I am doing great today. I'm excited for our
Uh,
last day.
yes, we are here for day 3. I am super duper excited. Today is gonna be the best day. I'm pretty
Yes,
sure. So let's
really
make it
looking
the
forward.
best day of all the days.
Mm.
So let's get it started. And I see that a lot of people are joining slowly. So hopefully a lot of you will join later. And let's get it started our slides. I'm gonna show my screen and start our conference.
There we go.
All right.
Well,
Go ahead, Sarah.
we have a great schedule lined up today. Can you just switch to the next screen? And of course, before we talk about our schedule, we should mention our wonderful sponsors who have made it possible for us to provide this for you for free and include all these wonderful prizes and activities. So thank you, one and all. So what do we have lined up for you today? Let's see. We have so many good speakers. We've got GDEs, we've got Googlers, we've got huge community contributors. I personally am excited for Felix's talk because I use Block and Cubit all the time, and he's the primary maintainer of that. And yeah, also creating games with physics and Flutter. That's the first talk coming up. I'm really excited for that. There's just everything is great. There's also some activities. Majid will talk to you about that in a minute.
Yes, let's talk about activities. So since people are joining slowly, so I can explain a little bit slower. So if you have been with us since 2 days ago, you know that we ran a few activities with a lot of prizes. Some of them are already done, and so we know the winners. We're gonna contact you very soon, right after the conference. Don't worry. We will contact you for sure. We have all of your information. But today, specifically, we're going to talk about 2 quiz and 2 activity during the conference, and a couple of them are already ongoing. So still you have time to go and check it out, do something, and win a prize. And deadline for all of them are by end of the week. So you still have time to win something even after the conference. Don't worry about it. Check out our activities page on FlutterVikings.com and read more about all of them. But I really want to show you some of the submissions that we or our sponsors received. Let's see. For our logo contest, I'm gonna show you this. We received a lot of submissions, first of all, and that is fantastic. So this is one of them. You see that how beautiful is this implementation. Let's run it again, watch it again. So you have time to do maybe better than this or similar. You have time to send us your app or logo contest, and we will judge that at the end of the conference. So for another one, these are the submissions that actually we received for logo. Another one for building Vikings from stream. That is one of these good ones that they received and they shared with us. Look at just this nice app with Viking theme. It's just very nice. So some of you probably right now in this stream, they know who has done that. So you created that and shared and send it to us. It's amazing. Hopefully you will be winner and we will contact you for your prize. You still have time to do it though. So let's move on to the next one. We have a very, very easy contest. Yesterday we ran a selfie with me. Of course, we will do it again today. We've received a lot of good pictures and tweets on the Twitters. These are some of them. We really like them. Some of them are already won prizes. We will contact you for sure, but you still have time to do it today. So Take your time, go to our website, tweet something to us, take a selfie, and win a prize at the end of the conference.
Can I just jump in here for a second and make sure that you
Absolutely.
use the text we put on the website, because we have so much engagement. I need to search for the exact text words, not just the tags. So if you want to be considered, please use the words from the website.
Absolutely. And how can you enter to our contest? Time to time, we are asking about reference, booking reference or ticket ID. Sarah, can you just explain quickly?
Sure. So most of you should have gotten an email with some attachments that look like this. And there are two things at the bottom, a unique ID and a reference ID that are both associated with your ticket. Today, I think you only need the reference ID to participate, so don't worry about that big long one. And if you did not get this, there is also, the reference ID is also in your email that you should have gotten today as a reminder about day 3. It's at the bottom. So it's this one that's like DRX2. That's your reference ID that you can use to participate in the live activity we have coming up today. Yeah.
Exactly. So just check your email. You get your reference book in the email. You already have received another email today from us. You can check it out. The book reference book is there. If you don't have a ticket, you need to grab a ticket for sure. So let's continue. Sarah, everyone is welcomed, right?
Yes, everyone is welcome. By the way, happy International Men's Day. We want to say that men, women, everybody, all races, all genders, everybody's welcome. So be nice, or we will censor you. But mostly just be nice.
Yes. So the summary of our code of conduct is like, just be nice. You are nice and be nice, and that's it. So let's continue and say thank you again for joining us. I see a lot of you right now joined again, and the number is counting. It's so exciting to see you again on board. I don't want to keep you waited. The first speaker is already here, and we want to, me and Sarah, we want to invite Naval, right, Sarah?
Yes, I have to say, I was supposed to moderate today, but my 2-year-old is sick, and so you don't want to listen to her screaming most of the time. So Nawal has very graciously jumped in at the last minute to help out, and we are so lucky to have her. So thank you, Nawal. Please come to the stage.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. It's great to have you.
Hello, Nawal. How's it going today?
All good. From my side, I'm super excited for this awesome day, and I really hope that the audience are excited as well.
They are.
Sure
I believe they are. They are. So, okay. So we're going to jump off the stage, and stage is yours. And
Awesome.
Here you go. See ya. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Hello, everyone. Quickly, I'm a Flutter developer, of course. Let me just introduce you to the first speaker for today. He is Lukas Klingsbo. He's a programmer, backpacker, keyboard builder, and climber. Fun fact about him, he is a maintainer for the Flutter's largest game engine, Flame. And he will be talking about today creating games with physics in Flutter. So please, our first speaker. Yep. Hello, Lukas.
Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. I'm super excited for your talk.
Hope you will enjoy it.
Good luck.
All right. Yeah, I'm Lukas, as Noel said, and I'm from Sweden. And I come from the Flame game engine team. And I'm here to do a presentation about how to use physics in games in Flutter. And yeah, first of all, I think most of you have probably not heard of Flame. Like, even we are the biggest game engine for Flutter, but people don't really think of Flutter when they're gonna make a game for something. So yeah, we are the biggest one, but we don't really have that much competition either. We have like around 3,600 stars on GitHub now, I think. So if you want to support us, go in and give us a star. And so Flame, it's just a widget like within, so it can live anywhere inside of your Flutter app, which is great because then you can use all these things that Flutter is doing really great, like navigation and menus and all that kind of things. Meanwhile, you can have a game engine doing the things that you need to have a game engine for. And yeah, we have been building this for around 3 years, and I've been been committing to it for maybe half of that. It was initially created by Luan Potter, and it's now maintained by Luan, myself, and two people called Eric and Hernan. And if you're creating a game and joining our Discord or on Stack Overflow or wherever, you will probably see one of us for around answering questions. And yeah, we're gonna release version 1 very soon, which will be great. And so Flame is like the whole game engine that we have. And then we have built a physics engine, or ported a physics engine that we call Forge 2D, which is built on top of Box 2D, which is a lot of people have probably heard about. And to tell you about how Forge 2D came into existence, you can pretty much look at this picture. Because I was stuck on this container ship for 3 weeks because it was really, really hot when I was traveling in China and I wanted to get out of there, but I was too stubborn to fly. So I decided to take a container ship. So I was stuck on this container ship for 3 weeks without any internet and barely anyone to talk to because they didn't really know any English. So what do? You have nothing to do. You code. And I coded like I have never coded before. So it was crazy. It was coding through day and night and through storm and sunshine. And I can tell you, like, it's not very good for your sanity, but you get a shit ton of work done when you code like that. And since I didn't have any internet, the only repositories I had downloaded was Flame and this rough port of Box 2D to Dart. And my plan was to write a game on this trip. But I just noticed myself doing more and more fixes within this physics engine and on Flame. So I didn't get that much done on the game. I mostly just worked on the physics engine and Flame. And now when we've been locked up in Corona and stuff, I just continued to work on this. And there's still a lot of cleanup to do in Forge 2D, but now we have a release out at least. And yeah, to tell you how to make a game with this is the classic pubspec file. You have seen it 100 times before probably. And the two main parts here is you have to get Flame and you have to get this, it's like a bridge between Flame and Forge 2D. Since Forge 2D is just in pure Dart, you can use anything. You can just use the normal Dart project. But this package, it's connected to Flame and Flutter. Let's see. And here we have our classic main method. We say that we want to have this app in full screen, and it should be portrait mode. And then, like I said, the game is just a widget. So you can just say that, I want to run this widget. Yeah, and here is the actual main game method. So we have a few different types of game classes you can choose from, and this one uses Forge 2D game since it is using physics. And if you want to use taps, for example, you can use the tap detector, which we will use here. And we have some images here that loads before when the widget is loading. And I will go through the onTap method and the onResize and stuff later. So, and in the game, we need some form of like actors or players or enemies and stuff. So in this case, we're going to use something called a sprite body component. And a body is in this physics world is something that can interact with other bodies. So they can like collide and put force on other bodies, etc. And in this one, we want to have a sprite on top of that body. So that's why it's a sprite body component. And then we want it to start somewhere in the world. And we want it to have some form of image on the sprite. And these methods I'm going to go through later. I was planning to do some like live coding, but we don't have that much time. So I have just crammed everything into the slides. And as for our sprite, we will use this nice little FlutterViking bird. And here comes this is basically the hardest thing you have to do when you're using shapes that are not round or rectangular or something like that when you're using the physics engine. So we had to, since you can see this one, it's not, you cannot just put a circle or a rectangle on top of this one and determine how it will collide. So that's why we have a polygon shape here. And it is all in relation to what size it has, because then we can size it up and size it down, and the polygon stays the same as the sprite. And this one polygon is quite rough, but it's doing the job. And in Box 2D, you have a fixture definition and a body definition. And a body definition can have several fixtures on top of it, but we're not going to go any further into that now. So this body will just have one fixture, and that fixture has this polygon shape, and it has restitution of a little bit. That means how much it will like bounce back when it collides with something, or how much of the force it will like absorb. And density and friction, that's fairly like self-explanatory. And then we put the object. You can put whatever you want in here, but here we put the object itself in there to be able to know which object it is if it collides with something else. And since the physics world that we're handling here, that one is much larger than the world on the screen. So we take the start position, which is where the person has tapped or something in relation to the screen, and then we convert it to where that position is in the world of the physics. And the angle, we just put the random angle of it, and body type dynamic just means that it can move around. And then we create the body and add the fixture to the body. So here is what this very rough polygon will look like, and where it will collide with other things. So you can, if you put some more time into this, you can obviously make it a lot more accurate, but I didn't feel it was needed now. Right. And if you remember this one, this was our like main game class. And you see that we have this on tap down, and we're obviously gonna use that to do something fun in the game too. So this is that method. And here we just take the position that the user pressed on the screen, and we are going to create either a Viking or an evil Viking. I haven't told you about the evil Viking yet, but that's coming. And so it's like 80% chance here that we will have a normal Viking, and 20% chance that there will be an evil Viking. Let's see. Yeah, so this is the evil Viking. And yeah, it is exactly the same as the Viking. It's just another object, and it gets another image too. And now we've added some things to the Viking here, which is smacked. So it can be like hit in the head or something. And if it is smacked, we're gonna like throw it straight up into the air. So this is like a vector that is with a force that is put on the center of this body. So this is like the y-axis, so it's just thrown straight up. And then after it's been thrown up, it's not smacked anymore. And to determine when it should be smacked, we have this evil contact callback. So it's a contact callback where we have, if a normal Viking gets in contact with a Viking, the Viking will be smacked. And that contact callback we just add on the game. Right, so that was fairly quick. And now I'm gonna just show you how that will look like. Let's see. That way. Swap this to another tab. There we go. And I was going to run it in an emulator, but apparently if you run Wayland, you can't share the emulator on in this StreamYard thing. So here it is, built for web instead. So here you see these normal Vikings that I was talking about. They just come in and bounce a little bit. And we had 20% chance of getting an evil Viking. So that's, yeah, so here we got an evil Viking. Let's see what happens now. You can see that it's gonna start like throwing away the other Vikings. Okay, I don't know if it lags a little bit on the stream, I think, but in the browser and on the phone, it will be running on 60 FPS. And I realized that this doesn't really show that much of how the physics engine can do. So I will show you some other examples too, because this is just birds flying around. It's quite fun, but it doesn't show that much about the physics engine. So let me share that with you. Okay, why doesn't that pop up? Oh, there we go. So you see there's like a little blob. I can just, so here there are no sprites, just to like make it a bit clearer. And you see here you can see more how the physics can interact. We can choose some other example here to show it more too. Like here we have a lot of domino things. We can drop some balls on them. And you see how everything just collides. Ooh. Yeah. And then, yeah, we already showed you the sprite bodies, but here's another example with those ones with like pizzas just flying around. Or some more like Revolut joints. There are lots of different joints in there that you can use, but that is for another much longer presentation, I think. I don't know if it is lagging on the streams. It is not lagging in the browser. It's all running in 60 FPS. And I think I am running out of time, so I should probably take some questions. Go back to this one.
Thank you so much, Lukas. It was indeed informative. I like the pizza.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see, what do we have here? Any questions?
Right, I don't have the YouTube one open. Should I open that? Or where do the questions come in here too?
Yes, they will. Okay. So if you have any questions for Lukas, please put them in the chat area.
Right,
So,
someone asked if we have an article. Yeah, since we're just about to release version 1, we're gonna write up some new articles. We have a lot of old articles for our old versions, but kind of outdated now because we have rewritten all the APIs for everything we have learned during the years. So soon there will be a lot of articles, probably during the Christmas break when everyone has more time to not to do their normal jobs.
awesome. So they can follow you on Twitter, right, Lukas?
Yeah, and also check out our GitHub. There's lots of examples and documentation there, but there's no like Medium articles or this full-on tutorials that aren't outdated at the moment, because it was just a few days ago since we released the last release, or the last release candidate of version 1 for Flame.
Awesome. So we have another question, which says, does it run in 60 frames per second?
Yes, it does. In
Cool.
browser and on iPhone and Android, and soon on desktop, hopefully.
So you can check Lukas's work on GitHub, and they can follow you on Twitter as well for more updates.
I don't really post that much on Twitter, but you can follow me on GitHub and you'll see what I code.
Follow him on GitHub. Awesome.
And don't forget to check out the Flame Engine organization on GitHub. There's a lot of cool stuff there.
Yep. Thank you so much, Lukas.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So now we will be having Burak from AppCircle for a small activity.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's me again with another quiz. So, yes, I guess if you have attended the quiz in previous days, you know the drill. Go to this address menti.com and just use this code to join the quiz. We have great mobile CI/CD related prizes at the end. Again, a short, a dynamic, a lightning quiz with you, and you can start joining the quiz right now. We'll wait for a minute or two. Again, we have some fun questions that you can show your passion about mobile CI/CD, and you can win. If you missed it yesterday or the day before, you can still have a chance to win it. So don't miss. And let's now see who is joining and wait for the people to join. We really had great participants and attendees in the previous days. So of course, don't forget to enter your ticket reference ID so that we can get in touch with you if you are a winner. Otherwise, yesterday, unfortunately, the first place did not actually enter their reference ID. So unfortunately, they missed their prizes. But otherwise, we'll get in touch with you and share how you can access it. And wow, the first activity of the day, and it's already crowded here, so we'll wait a little bit more. People are squeezing in, and we see the same people, I guess, or same avatars at least. So we'll see how it'll go. I'm giving it a few more seconds to go if there will be some other people, and of course And I guess we're good to go. And yeah, still people are joining. Good to see that the quiz. But this is your last chance, and unless you join right now, you will need to wait until next year with another FlutterVikings event to join. So I'm giving 10 more seconds. 10, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're good to go. You can still join the quiz while it's ongoing. So I guess I'll need to wait a few more seconds because we still have people coming in. Wow. Okay, is it done? Are people still joining? Yep. Okay, we're good to go now. You will still have opportunity to join if even if you are missing it. And now let's start. So our first question is about how does mobile CI/CD improve our lives? So we have 4 options. It's by allowing sloppy coding, by eliminating automation, by automating processes, or by increasing build times. A relatively easy question. If you have paid attention to the first presentation the first day, even if you haven't paid attention to that presentation, you can answer this question. And also, if you missed that, you can always go back and watch the first day recording in the first hour. Great. Almost everyone answered it correctly. And don't forget that faster answers get higher scores. So if you have answered quicker, you have gained more points, as you can see here. And now let's move on to the second question. Okay, so this one is again from a Flutter knowledge. What does Flutter drive command do? It displays the Flutter installation drive. It builds the project in another drive, installs the drivers required for Flutter, or it runs the specified integration tests. This one I'm not sure how people respond. It's hard to guess. The command itself is self-explanatory, but depending on the meaning you're expecting from it. Great. Yes, exactly. It runs the specified integration test. It's an important command, and it works very well with mobile CI/CD, so that you can automate your processes using the Flutter. You can automate your testing processes using the Flutter drive command, and we see that the competition is again very close. And don't forget that faster answers get higher scores. And now let's move on to the third question. So which one is a benefit of mobile CI/CD? Another one that you might have seen from the first day's presentation. So it's increased project discipline, increased project complexity, increased project delays, or all of the above. So it's increasing something in the project, but we are wondering what it is increasing within the project. So let's see the results in just under 10 seconds. Yes, it increases the project discipline. Unfortunately, we had some people tricked by all of the above answer. And let's see how the leaderboards have changed. Oh, again, a close competition, and the faster response got the first place. Now, the fourth question, you still have a chance to win. So again, a Flutter knowledge question. Which one is a valid Flutter command to measure app startup time? Actually, these are all very similar, but only one of these commands are actually correct. And you can always check the Flutter documentation if you are unsure. So we have the Flutter run, 2 options of the Flutter run command, 2 options of the Flutter trace command with similar parameters. So this is also very useful in mobile CI/CD, so that after building your application, you can run the time. and it's the Flutter and trace startup. So it's not like profile startup, but it's trace startup with the profile switch. And let's see how this knowledge question affected the leaderboards. And yes, this one was a bit slow one, and we have a lead winner right now. But you can answer fast, and you can still be the first person in the leaderboards with the last question. And our last question is, which one is not a culture change achieved with mobile CI/CD? So you can achieve continuous improvement, continuous confusion, continuous quality, or continuous monitoring. So one of these are not achieved with mobile CI/CD, but the rest is positive improvements of mobile CI/CD in your life. So if you apply it correctly in an end-to-end manner, you should be achieving 3 of these, and this would be really beneficial for you in any kind of mobile project you are developing. And yes, it's of course continuous confusion, so that you do not get confused if you have mobile CI/CD. Everything is so crystal clear. And let's see how the leaderboards have changed. Oh, we have very fast responders and fast. We have another winner right now. Thank you for everyone joining us. We'll get in touch with you regarding your prices, and see you hopefully next year in another event. Hope you enjoyed our small quizzes, and hope you have an insight about getting mobile CI/CD in your lives for the future and in any of your projects.
Thank you so much, Burak, and congratulations to those who won. So, Sarah, can you please come to the stage? Hello. You're muted.
I am very professional. Yes, I know. We have some good activities lined up today, and we have about 5 minutes before Robert is here to start, so I will just review them. We have the social media contest. Make selfies, tweet about them, tag us. You will get some prizes. You can do the logo contest. I think we saw some really good examples this morning of submissions we've had so far, but it's not over yet. There are still dashes to give away, places to be had in our contest. We have the Microsoft Azure Flutter web app competition, where you can follow the instructions on the FlutterVikings/activity page that describes exactly what you need to do. It's very simple. Just follow the instructions and the links. So that's ongoing. There's also, from the first day, it's still ongoing, and we still want more submissions for the @company competition to make a Flutter app using their protocol. It's a very, very interesting idea that could change a lot of things on the web if it takes off. So give it a shot. And then we also have the ongoing at the other ongoing app contest. And today we have AppCircle, or I'm sorry, Codemagic has a quiz up that we hope you will take, and you can learn about what kind of developer you are, and then you get a prize if you take their personality quiz that they wrote in Flutter. So that's what we've got going on today. It's a lot of stuff, but we're an online conference, so we know we have to work hard to keep everyone excited and engaged with us. So hope you're enjoying it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah. And yeah, so unfortunately, Kamal wasn't able to join us today. So our next speaker is Robert. Robert is an app developer who has been using and creating Flutter content for over 2 years. He has a super awesome YouTube channel where he shares informative tutorials. So check his channel, but not now, because Robert will be talking today about Flutter MVU architecture with a touch of C. So yes, Robert, please come to the stage.
Hello.
Hello, Robert.
Can
How
you
are
see
you?
me?
Nope.
Oh, you can't see me. Oh
Nope.
no.
Oh, yeah.
This is bad times. I will see if I can fix it really quickly.
Sure.
Otherwise, I will speak and I will see if I can get it up and running anyway.
Awesome. So the stage is all yours. All the best
Okay.
luck.
Thank you. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about Flutter MVU or the MVU architecture. And I will see if I can just get my cam running, which I do not think I can. Let's see. There we go. Maybe you can see me now. Let me know otherwise. Anyway, so in this talk, I'm going to talk about MVU architecture. And I'm going to specifically use RiverPod, Flutter hooks, and state notifier. And that's just something that I've, during these 2 years or almost 3 years, that I've really gotten to enjoy now. And the funny part with this one is that I'm really bad at jokes. So the C doesn't mean the C language. It actually means just controller classes. So, sorry, not sorry. Okay, so what is MVU? So you can break it down into 3 different parts, or the 3 different words. So model stands for, it's a rough comparison to just state. So that would be the state of your application. We have view, and that would be just the UI or the widgets. And then we have update. And the way I'm using the MVU architecture is a bit changed. So it's not the specific exact one that you have probably read. I will show you exactly what I mean, but just think of it just like the method that you would update the state with. So moving on, we have 2 core principles that we want to follow. The first one being immutability, and the second one being unidirectional data flow. So to go into immutability first, just think of that you have one class where you want to call your specific state logic. So I'm just going to call it my object controller, and we extend the state notifier. And here you can see the specific part of a immutable object. So we'll go into a more specific use case. And we're going to pass this immutable object. So the state is now this immutable object. So you can think of this like a person class or a dog class or whatever you want to have. We have our methods on this controller where we want to somehow update the state. So I have this copy with method. So the state here actually represents this immutable object. And I've actually created a method on this immutable object, which is copy with. And that would copy the object, and then we could change the state on some of the variables. So in this case, we increment the age by 1. The important part here is that this object is immutable, so you can't actually take the age on this object and just increment it. You have to copy the whole object or the whole state and reassign it. With unidirectional data flow, we means that from the view, we call update or the methods, which updates the model or the state, and that will then be presented in the view. So that's a very, very simplistic way of looking at it, but I think it will get the things across. So let's get into some live coding. And I will see if I can make this as simple as possible. So what we're going to do first is that we're going to go to the pubsec YAML file. I'm just going to remove all the comments. And I'm going to add some packages. So the first one being Flutter hooks or hooks RiverPod. And this one actually adds state notifiers as well, we're going to use hooks. And this is Flutter hooks is very controversial to many. You don't actually need to use hooks, but I prefer using it. I like the way it makes the code read. And then I use equatable, and that's just to make, the class equal. So you can override those instead of doing it the normal way. So going back, we go to the main method. And here we can have, let's just remove all of the comments here. We have the normal counter app, right? So what we want to do now is actually change the counter app so we can have our own or this MVU architecture instead. So to do this, what we first do is actually we remove all of this set state logic. And we have a couple of them, right? So we have the onPressed as well. And we're just going to set the onPress to an empty callback right now. And let's ignore that we don't have the actual state right now. Then we're going to remove, so we don't use a stateful widget anymore. We're going to use a hook widget. And then let's ignore this title. We're just going to pass it instead. Let's see, like that. And we can remove the title for now. Of course, you can pass the variable if you want to as well. So that's just a simple look at the hook widget. So what we're going to do now is actually create some kind of state. So if we create a new class, I'm going to just call it counter state. Now just be aware that this can be simplified quite a lot. You don't actually have to create all of this just to create a counter application, but this was the easiest thing I could do for the time I have. So I'm just going to look at the code at the side as well so I don't miss anything. We're going to create a new class. This is going to be a counter state, and we're going to extend equatable. Now this lets us add a couple of things so we can override. Right now we don't have anything to override, so we'll just let it be like that for now. But what we're going to do now is actually add a I forgot even what it's called now, but we're going to add this immutable. That will force us to make all of our variables inside here final. So as this counter state is actually very simple now, we will only have one actual field in it, and that will be the count. Now this count actually requires us now to have a constructor. So we will create a constructor as well, and we will wrap it in squiggly brackets. So when we actually create the state, we will have that one. And just because I don't know how much time I actually have, I will make it a bit more simpler to also create this, oh, not this one. That's actually the wrong one. I'm going to add this one. And that's just to have a name constructor to make the count 0 to begin with. Now we can have our props, and we can just pass our count here. So we don't have to really think of anything else for overriding the equality operations. We can just add this. And of course, we can add stringify and stuff like that as well. Now for the counter state, or for the copy with method, it looks something like this. So you have a copy with method, which is going to return this specific class, so this being the counter state. So we have, I'm just going to see if, yeah. So we are passing the count inside here, and we're going to assign it to a new instance of this class. And if we didn't pass any count, we're actually going to just assign it to the count it was before. So that will just be making a copy of it and then reassigning it to values we pass in. And if we don't pass in anything, we will just make a copy of it. And yeah, that is actually just what we have to do for the counter state. What we're going to do now is actually create a controller in this case. And I'm going to name it to counter controller. Now, this one is the more interesting part. So if we create a counter controller class, this class is going to extend the state notifier. So if we just import that. So think of state notifier as a re-implementation of notifier. So if you haven't used notifier before, it's just a way to have our state, or in this case, let's say we have this counter state here, like that. And we can actually have this in our widget, and whenever this one changes anything in the state notifier or the state, it will update the view. So let's add a call to super. We're going to do one more thing here. And this state now is actually representing this counter state. So I'm going to actually make it optional here. The reason I want to make it optional is because if we don't pass any state when we create this counter controller, I just want to make this to a initial state. The reason I'm doing this is because it makes it a lot more easy to actually test this one. I'm just going to see if I can add a comma to make this a bit more, that didn't make it readable. Okay, like that. So this just makes it so that if we don't pass a initial state to this controller, we are going to use the initial state of that state, counter state. That's many state words. So here we can add our increment method. The reason I like to do it this approach is because now we actually force the developer to change the state inside these controllers. So we don't, this lets us know that when we want to change some kind of state in the app, we move to either controllers or controller classes or different providers if we want to use that. So in this case, we want to change the state. So we access the state on this object. We're going to assign it to the state again. And of course, you don't have to write this.state. I can simplify it like this if you want to as well. And we can use the copy with method. And now we can reassign this count value. So we make a copy of the object, and we say that the count is going to be state.count +1. And now this is a very simple use case. So just ignore that part as of now. I will have more in-depth examples later on. So that is actually all we have to do with this controller class. Now we just need to implement it or add a provider for it. And as I'm using Riverpod, we're going to use counter controller provider, and we're going to create a state notifier provider with the type, and the type is going to be the counter controller because that implements or extends the state notifier. So counter controller, and here we can just create that instance. So as you remember, we don't pass any state. That means the initial state is going to be the initial state. So the count is 0. Now we can go to the main file. And I'm going to go to the main file here as well. We have to do one more thing. And that is actually wrap my app with a provider scope. And that just makes it so that our app has access to those providers we created. So now at the top of the hook widget, we can use a final counter state. And we can assign it to use provider, and this one comes from hooks. So if you don't use hooks, then the syntax will be a bit different. And here we can access that controller provider. So it's counter controller provider. And inside here, we want to access the state as well. Now I'm just going to copy this text. And I'm going to wrap it in here. So here we can say that we want to access the state count here. So that will just display that count. And now for the method, we used access the context. And here we can take read. And what we want to read is actually the provider that we have. And now we can pass or call our method, which is increment. Now this is actually all we have to do, unless I missed something. Let's see, that is up to proof now. But that's mainly everything we have to do. And now we're actually forcing the user or the developer to always try to use or change the state on one way, meaning that from the view, we call our method. The method is in our controllers that would update the state. And then every time or everywhere we listen to it, it will change. So let's just see. Now you can't probably see anything. Can I zoom in a little? And we can see that it increments. Now the really nice thing is that this is actually really, really testable, which means we can just wrap this one, the test, in a provider scope. And that should in theory work as well. So if we run the test, and this test is of course used in a normal counter widget or the counter application. And we can see that that test runs as well. So that is everything we have to do to implement this architecture. And I used it in my personal projects, and I think it's really, really easy to use. And hopefully you will think it's nice or easy to use as well. And you have probably used something similar either way. This is a very approach that you will pretty much come into if you just use Riverpod from the start of. Yeah, that is pretty much everything I have. Thank you. And of course, you can find me on all of these medias. You can just search for my name and you will probably just find me everywhere. So if you have any questions, let me know. Does it look like read? I don't really.
The first question that we have is... oh, it's gone. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it looks like Redux. You can pretty much make this to look. So if you use block, for example, you have that. Now I don't remember the method you will call, but you could pass classes or and you would have map event or something like that. You can go with the same approach as well. I just usually prefer to name my methods and just make it as simple as possible, and then I would refactor depending on my need. So I usually try to make it as simple as possible, and I just refactor up if I need to.
Awesome.
Yep.
Another question is, so the state doesn't get modified, it's cloned with some distinctions.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think of when you mutate something, you could have a object and you could access variables, and then you can change those variables. That means that you're mutating that class or object. With this immutability way of doing it, you would copy the whole object and just make a change in that copy. And then you reassign the whole object directly. That means that if you are in the application, so if we go to main here, let's see if I can. That means that we can't really take the state here and then just take count and do ++. This doesn't really, let's see if we can do it like this. You can see that we have some compile errors. That means that's one of the reasons why I like state notifier, because it warns us that we shouldn't use state like this. And also we can't do this with count as it's immutable. So this just forces us another way of using, just changing that state or updating that state in one specific place. I hope that makes sense, at least.
Awesome. So another question is, how do you use it with a stateless widget?
So that's one of the things. So when you're using Riverpod, you usually don't use a stateless widget. You use either, I think if you don't use hooks, you use a consumer widget, believe it's called. and with hooks you use a hook widget. But of course, if you don't use RiverPod, you can use any other kind of like injection or get it or whatever you want to do. It's just a matter of RiverPod is used to pass that object around the widget tree. So it's nothing fancy with that. That's just one way of doing it. So I don't really like to have the way I work to be limited to one specific package. So you can use whatever you want. You can use get it as well. And then just pass that controller around and then just change in state and just listen to it. I think you can do pretty much the exact same thing with get it and get it with mixins. But I haven't really tested it out, but I believe so at least.
Another question is how to use this approach with the async issues like CRUD in Firebase.
Yeah, so there are a couple of different ways. With RiverPod, you get access to a async value type that you can use, which forces you to have like a loading state and stuff like that. What I usually do is I try to use the given providers from RiverPod, so you can use like the future provider or stream provider. I try to make my controllers as simple as possible, but a lot of the times I can just refactor them to make them use network calls as well. And I think I have a video where I make a API request from my controller. I just named it a bit different that time, but it should still be the same way. And I will have more example of this on my channel later.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Another question is, what is your favorite library for immutable collections? Dart-Z, build collection, Qt Dart.
I haven't really tested out build collection. I like Kotlin quite a lot because I work with Kotlin and Android on my daytime job. So I really like KT Dart. I can't really pronounce it. KT Dart. So that's probably my go-to as of now. But yeah, anything that fits my need works perfectly.
Awesome. Do you also use Freezed with this setup?
Yeah, so mainly I use Freezed actually. But I think it would be too complicated to show in this amount of time. So I think Equatable most of the times will work just fine. But you will get some free things when you use Freezed, such as the copy with method and stuff like that. So it's just what you prefer. If you don't like to use code generation, then Freezed is probably not for you, but I use it for my own project, so it works quite good.
Cool. So what was the use of RiverPod?
Yeah, so if you have, let's see, if you used like provider or get it before, that's just a way of passing values down. So for example, with this approach, I can create widgets like down here, another widget, hook widget, and here I can access that same object like this. So RiverPod actually passes, or with RiverPod and like this provider scope, you have access to that cached version of the object. So think of it as provider, you passing the value down the widget tree, or with get it, you can access it like anywhere. There are different solutions to the same problem pretty much. You access some kind of class. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert, for your
Thank you.
time and this amazing session.
Thank you. Have a nice one, everyone.
Thank you. So now we will be having Scott from the Flutter community for a surprise talk. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Noel. How you doing?
All good. Now, this is a surprise for me, too.
It's a surprise for me, too. Now, this is not a whole talk. There we go. This is not a whole talk, but it is a little piece of a talk that I do. It'll take just a few minutes, and some people tend to enjoy it. Now, this is from a talk I do called RenderFlex Nightmares. So if you have ever beaten your head against a brick wall playing around with rows and columns, this is for you. So let me pull this up here. Just a moment. RenderFlex children have non-zero flex, but incoming height constraints are unbounded. We all know this one. So before we get started here, I would like to quote a very, very wise man. Okay. If inherited widget is Flutter's monad, then RenderFlex children have non-zero flex, but incoming height constraints are unbounded is our boogeyman. It's a very wise man. Boogeyman. Umonero. Hombre boogeyman. Mummas. Baba Yaga. RenderFlex children have non-zero flex, but incoming height constraints are unbounded. Okay, fine. Something is trying to be infinitely large in the main axis. Nothing is there to stop it. You broke it, you fix it. But in all seriousness, you need to take some actions in order to contain your row or column or set things up in such a way that the children are not trying to be infinitely large. Now, again, this is a small part of a much longer talk, but here's the fun part. And please don't take this seriously. This is only for entertainment, really. But you must remember, Padawan, a flex is flexible, but don't confuse the fact that it can be flexible with an actual flexible. The flex fit has nothing to do with the fit of the flex. Flexes don't fit. The flex of a flexible determines the strength or gravity of the flexible, except when, well, it doesn't. And if you're familiar with loose fit flexibles, that would be why. You can set the flex to 9 gajillion, but if you do set your flex fit to a loose, then it still isn't going to do anything. The flex fit of the fit determines if the fit of the flexible will be allowed to flex the flexible so that it better fits into the flex. And whatever you do, do not confuse the flex with the flex, or you're going to end up really just saying. I'm sorry. Were you thinking I was going to say something else? No. Anyhow, that's just a little piece of a much larger talk. And again, we really appreciate you all coming out. Now, one other thing I would like to mention, don't forget, you can get FlutterVikings t-shirts by going to patreon.com/Flutter_community. Again, that's patreon.com/Flutter_community. I'll put that in the chat here in just a moment. And with that, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Scott, for this awesome surprise talk. And now we have Kevin from Codemagic. Please, Kevin, can you come to the stage?
Hello.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. You?
Awesome. So what do we have for today?
Okay, so hi, everyone. Hope you've been enjoying all the talks as much as I have. Been really good and informative. I'm Kevin from Codemagic, and we launched Flutter. We launched when Flutter 1.0 stable was released about 2 years ago, and so it's going to be our second birthday too soon. We really love Flutter. I help people set up CI/CD pipelines using YAML config files, and today I wanted to share some tips about how you can make this more efficient. Hopefully this should be useful for anybody working with YAML files, and not only CI/CD configs, but for things like Docker configuration or anything else that use a YAML-based config. One fun fact that I learned during the preparation for this presentation was that YAML stands for YAML Ain't Markup Language, and it's a recursive acronym. So I found that quite interesting. So today I'm presenting Killing YAML Boilerplate, or DRY, Don't Repeat Your YAML. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with YAML through using the pubspec.yaml in your Flutter projects. It's just a little bit more complicated when it comes to CI/CD configuration if you aren't a DevOps specialist. So most CI/CD providers use YAML file configurations to set up their pipelines rather than UI or alongside it. So I'm going to share some of those tips and tricks that I've learnt that should hopefully make it easier for you to work with. I'll speak for about 10 minutes and I'm going to be covering a few things such as dynamic environment variables with Flutter flavors, how to reduce repetition in YAML configurations, and using YAML templates. And if you're here for the $100 credit that Codemagic is giving away, then you can see the details on the fluttervikings.com/activities page, and you can see the details there. And I'll be showing you what we built with Flutter Web towards the end of my YAML tips and tricks section. Okay, so what is YAML and why to use it in CI/CD? So YAML is a declarative manifest configuration, and it gives you more flexibility and control over your build process. It's easier to integrate with third-party services such as SonarQube, Firebase App Distribution, or AWS Device Farm for testing your applications. Working with YAML files allows you to check your pipelines into version control and easily track changes, which is especially useful when you're working with teams. Other people in your team might not be familiar with a specific CI/CD product, but YAML is a common standard, so it's something that's quite useful to be aware of. This also means that you're not vendor locked, and you could use your YAML and build scripts should you ever decide to change your CI/CD provider in future. So one of the things that I've come across as a common mistake with YAML and using it is actually indentation. It's very sensitive to how you indent your Flutter, your YAML. So validating your YAML files is very important. One of the main tools that I've found useful for this is either an online tool such as YAMLlint.com, where you can copy paste your YAML file into their editor and verify whether the syntax is correct or not. Or personally, I use a VS Code extension, and there's several in the marketplace there that just highlight any errors with red squiggly lines. So as you can see in the screenshot here, I've got an incorrect indentation on line 6, and it's showing me an error. So I find that very good. Codemagic's actually working on some of our own tools, which should hopefully be available later on next year, which should help with validation. So I'm going to talk about dynamic environment variables and building Flutter flavors. So when people set up workflows for apps in their CI/CD solution that use Flutter flavors, they normally set up a new workflow for each flavor that they're building. Now, one of the things you can actually do is reduce those workflows to a single one by using the Codemagic API to set up environment variables that you want to use in your YAML file, and then dynamically pass them with the API, so you only need a single workflow. For an iOS app, for example, you would start the build using our API and pass in the name of the Xcode scheme and config that you want to use in the workflow. And for an example of that, we would make an API request that you can see on the left here, authorized with our XAuth token, and then passing in a JSON object, which you can see on the right-hand side, where we have an environment property, and I'm passing in the variables for my Xcode scheme, which for me would be prod, and my config release prod. So a very good way to reduce the number of workflows that you actually need to set up. So you could reduce yourself to a 30-line workflow rather than having several that are 100 lines or more. So another thing that I found particularly useful while preparing YAML files for customers is working with YAML aliases, anchors, and mappings. When you work with YAML config, you can end up with lots of repetition in different workflows. The same information keeps appearing, and when workflows are 100 lines of code or more, 100, 200 lines, we need to do whatever we can to try and reduce that, and it gets out of hand quickly. We can use what are called anchors, which are represented by an ampersand character, and aliases, which are represented by an asterisk. So in the code snippet we've got on the right hand side there, the ampersand is used next to a name of an anchor, and the information beneath it can be then aliased in the script section, which is part of my workflow, with an asterisk. So this will be calling this particular script that I want to run, which is to get my Flutter packages, but then I could have multiple scripts and in my definition section at the top, repeated in the workflow section at the bottom. So things like incrementing my iris build number or setting up my provisioning profiles and certificates, all as scripts within the workflow. Very useful. We can also use what's called aliased mapping. So here we can merge mappings which are defined in our definition section. So in this example here, we've got our environment versions where I'm defining that Flutter should be the stable version. I want to use Xcode 12.1 and the default CodePods version, and then to merge that into my workflow using the double less than symbol and then the asterisk for the alias mapping. So another way to just reduce the amount of code that you're using within your workflow. Okay, so the final tip would be to use YAML templates. Now, they can be set up in environments where you're frequently starting new projects, such as in an agency environment. The template would be used by developers to maintain consistency in your approach, and within that, you'd use YAML aliases, anchors, and mappings to maintain that brevity of configuration. You can decide, obviously, what works best for your organization, whether you want tests to run and what kind of steps go into your template, but it's just that consistency that you want to enforce or promote. One thing here that you can notice in the snippet on the right is the folder name, where we can pre-populate values when you create your project in your project creation tool. It can look through your YAML file and replace values for you as you need. So that's also another useful tip. Okay, so those were my favorite tips for YAML. I'm now going to sort of explain the Codemagic giveaway. So we're giving $100 of credit to 20 people that we select at random. So if there was any confusion on how we're selecting winners, what you're going to need to do is take our developer personality test, which you can get to at developertest.codemagic.app. And we made this when Flutter Web Preview was first released, and we built it on our CI/CD platform, and then we're hosting it on there with the static pages, which you can do too. But what we want you to do is to take the developer personality test and then tweet your result, and I'll just show you the page in a moment. Mention Codemagic.io, send us a screenshot of the character that you've received, and then add the hashtag FlutterVikings. And then we'll pick the winners at random, and we'll message you directly to let you know if you've won or not later today. But just to finish off, we'll have a quick look at the developer test. So just go to this page, start the test, and then it's going to ask you 15 questions, and hopefully when you get to the end of it, it's going to give you several different characters or one character that's going to be selected for you. And then if you just click the button at the top right hand here, you can tweet that out along with the hashtags that I've mentioned just then. Okay, so I'm going to just wrap it up there, and thank you for having me today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks that are scheduled.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And yeah, so our next speaker for today is Alois Deniel. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So he's a French Flutter developer with far too many open source projects. He created tools to help with development cycle like device preview or Flutter to Figma. And he'll be talking. And he'll be talking about building truly adaptive user interfaces. So yeah, please welcome with me Alois on stage.
Hi, Noel.
Hello, Alois. I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Not exactly. It's
Oh.
It's Alois.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. So good luck with your session.
Thank you. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. I'll start by sharing my screen. Okay, let's go. Okay. So welcome, everybody. It's such an honor to be part of the FlutterVikings conference. And thanks to all the organizers for this great event. So before diving into the subject, I will start by presenting myself briefly. So my name is Alois Deniel. I'm a French developer that works on Flutter full-time for various customers. And I'm also, I try to contribute on open source projects and on social media. You can find me on Twitter, for example. And if you go to my GitHub account here, you will see that I've got far too many projects, and I'm working on experimenting a lot on various subjects, and I encourage you to exchange with me by posting issues in my repository, for example. So today, I wanted to talk about adaptativity. When you come again across Flutter, you always find it great because it allows you to target a wide variety of devices, and supporting them doesn't mean that it's automatic. You have to take care of a lot of things, and that's what we will talk about today. We often hear about responsiveness, which often refers to the screen size, to adapting your visuals to the screen size of the device or the app window size, for example. But that's why I chose the adaptative term instead, to make a difference between the two, because I think that there's more than only the size of the screen to take care about. There's a lot of things that are part of the user context that you have to be careful with. So you have, of course, the screen size is very important, but you have also the platform your app is running on. You have the input the user is using. Does he use touch gestures? Does he use a keyboard and mouse or screen reader? Does he have? Is he disabled? Does he need to set up some accessibility setting to improve his experience? So you have to take care of that too, which we don't do enough, I think. And finally, performance. You have to adapt the experience to the current performance of the app regarding the device of the user. And the most basic thing is the network. If he doesn't have network and your app relies on network, what do you have to do, for example? Fortunately, Flutter provides all the tools needed to take care of all of this, and I'll try to give you a quick overview of what you should think about. And let's start with the most obvious one, which is the platform your app is running on. Is it Android, macOS, web, Windows? Detecting the current platform is pretty straightforward with Flutter. You got a class named platform, which gives you access to various test properties like is Windows, is Android, and you can test it and display different things, for example, if you want to. For the web part, it's a bit different because the web uses a different build system. So you have to test the target against the k-is-web constant too, if you want to adapt your UI or your experience to this platform. Additionally to the material built-in components that the Flutter team provides, you have also a nice set of iOS of widget that mimics the iOS components, native components. You can use the Cupertino widgets so that the user feel a bit more at home when using your app, for example, with the time picker here. You got also great packages from the community, like the Flutter platform widget that automatically adapt the widget to the platform. For example, here with a dialog window, which will show two different things regarding the current platform. But be careful, this only works for basic stuff, and if you want to really adapt your interface for the platform, you will have to do some manual things. But it's very useful for things like window, for example, dialog. All platforms haven't dedicated components yet. Maybe they will emerge at some point. But in the meantime, what I would recommend is building your own brand system, design system. And this way, it's easier to be consistent across all platforms. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what I introduced, like the responsive design. Adapting your app to the screen of the device. And the central component for this, you've probably already seen this widget, but it's the media query. It gives you access to many user context properties, and it's very important when it comes to adaptability, you will see. And one more thing, media query is an inherited widget, which is very interesting because if any property from the media query changes during the runtime, it will automatically trigger new build of all the widget that observe it just by invoking the auth method, which is very interesting because, for example, when the size of the window changes, all the method will be automatically called, and you will be able to provide dynamic things regarding the media query. So the screen size is probably the main factor when it comes to adapting the UI. Like I said before, responsive design is now a well-known concept, and I'm sure you already hear about this kind of concept where you have to adapt your layouts to the current size of the app or the window. And for this, we have the size property from media query, which may be useful, for example, if you want to provide different layouts, different widgets as a result of a build method regarding, for example, the width of the app. So here, for example, on large screen, we could have a side menu. And on a medium screen like tablets, we could have a bottom menu, which makes it easier to access. Less often used, but maybe important in certain cases, the screen density. The screen density is a factor that indicates the number of pixels for a set physical size. You can have two screens of the same physical size. For example, here we have an example. But one of the two devices may have twice or more pixels for the same physical size. And that's what we call the pixel density. And in Flutter, it's called the pixel ratio, device pixel ratio from the media query. So for example, here, we could decide to provide a low definition video for devices that have a lower density because it's bad to provide HD on a device that have low definition. You use more bandwidth, network bandwidth, and it's not very important since the screen isn't big enough to use all of this HD video. So it may be useful in many cases, like this one, when you rely on other assets, external assets that you will use from the network. For example, you could target different endpoints regarding the device, the screen density, for example. Nowadays, more and more devices have notches, thanks to Apple, and we have to adapt our UIs for them too. If you don't, information can be hidden behind the notch, or even bad, an interaction like a button here. So make sure you always have your content outside of this area. And for this, Media Query provides a property named view padding. View padding allows you to know on which side, what are the spaces that you have to take care about. So here, for example, we decided to add a padding at the top with the view padding top value. And this way, we have our button that is not behind the notch. You also have a helper widget, which is named Safe Area, which does exactly the same thing, plus more settings if you want to. But it's a quick way to do this, so don't hesitate to use this widget instead when possible. Okay, so in the same fashion, you may encounter issue with the software keyboard, which may hide several components on your app. For example, here, the validation button is behind the software keyboard, and this locks the UI for the user. So make sure to have your buttons on the screen and accessible. And for this, we have another property from Media Query, which is view in sets. And you can decide to add padding when necessary. This one is tricky, or I must say, maybe you're not aware of it, but the user has also several accessibility settings to enhance his custom user experience if it is disabled, for example. So he may decide to choose a default text scaling factor, for example, to make old fonts bigger or even bolder too. And again, everything is available from the Media Query. The tricky part is that it's by default, text uses this. So if you don't if you're not careful with it, this may break all your UIs, since we have text almost everywhere. So, and for the bold text, it's the same. From Media Query, you have a bold text property, which allows you, for example, here to switch between two font families. The dark mode is also available from the user device settings, and it is more and more common to have apps that are adapted to both. So the user may have a deception if he don't have a dark mode, for example, for your app, since it's more and more common to have a dark mode in apps. So make sure to provide this, and you can tweak. You have default components if you use the material app, which is pretty common. You can provide a dedicated dark theme and light theme. But if you want to tweak a bit more your UIs, you can also access to the platform brightness from the Media Query, which in this case, for example, allows you to choose between two different images as a background. Okay, like I said at the beginning, the user can interact with your app with various different ways. It can be a touch gesture, a mouse and keyboard, or a voice reader. You have a lot of things, and the first that we may not be aware of is screen reader. Screen reader is for, again, an accessibility setting that allows the user to have all of what's on the screen from audio. So if he doesn't see anything, he can interact with your app with his voice, and he can hear what's on the screen. So to make sure your app is compatible with this, with VoiceOver, you have to make sure that semantics are inserted into your widget tree. And you will have to put some information into this. So for example, if you have a button, you will have a label that describes the button, and you have a property that indicates that's a button. So with his voice, it can trigger an interaction with it. Fortunately, a majority of almost every widget in Flutter already have semantics, so you don't have to do a lot to make your app compatible with it by default. It's only if you build custom widgets. If the user uses a physical keyboard, which is more and more common with the latest iPad Pro, for example, providing shortcuts may improve his productivity and can make the difference with a concurrent app. So don't hesitate to use whether the raw keyboard listener, which allows you to capture any keyboard input, or to use the shortcuts widget, which allows you to define combinations of keys to trigger actions. The mouse is also very different from a touch gesture, since it's a lot more precise. So you can adapt your UI for this input too. You have a mouse region widget which may help you for that. You can have the position of the mouse. You can have whether he's clicking on his mouse, and it's very easy to adapt your UI with it. And you can, for example, make the padding a bit smaller when the user uses a mouse, and you can offer more content on the screen in this use case. Local is obviously an important parameter when you have to adapt your app, maybe one of the most obvious too. And Flutter have built-in support for localization too. So you have the local object which describes a country, a language, and a script code if needed. And this will allow you to provide dedicated labels for each of the country or languages. And you have a localizations widget. I will enter too much into the details about that, but you have great documentations on the official website. So I highly recommend you to set up everything at the beginning of your project, even if you support just one language at the beginning, because it's a real pain if you have to extract every label and to configure this afterwards. So try to force you to build everything at the beginning if you can. And you will have to use the Intel package too if you want to do this. And it provides several helpers too, like a date formatter, which is very hard to tackle if you do it yourself. So make sure to explore all of the documentations from this package too. If you really want to trick your UI, you also have the way the user chose to display the hours in a 24 format or AM, PM format. So it may help you if you have hours in images, for example, but it's very precise here. This one is very, you may not be aware of it again. It's if you support languages like that are written from left to right, from right to left, sorry, you have to know that there's a directionality which is set in the widget tree, and that defines the orientation of not only the text but also the rows, for example. So if you change the local of your app and you support this kind of languages, all your rows will be inverted automatically, which is cool in a way, but we often forget to try it out first. Last topic I consider related to adaptability. It's the performance, sorry. It's maybe for the current device, or like the animation, the supported animations, or the network, which is really, really common these days, since a lot of app relies on network resources. To try to test against the connectivity of the device, you can use the connectivity plugin, which allows you to subscribe to any change. So you can, this way you can know when the user becomes offline, for example, and you will not send requests, and you will be able to display a dedicated UI that indicates him that is currently offline, for example. Try to always provide an offline alternative to an online one, because else he may not understand what's going on, and if you're clear about its state, you will feel that your app is more responsive than if you're just throwing errors at him afterwards. And finally, Media Creep also provides a property that indicates whether the user disabled animations or not, which may allow you to tweak a bit more the transitions, for example, in your app. So it may be useful too if you really want a really adapted UI for him. Of course, there's a lot more. I tried to give you some pointers, and I encourage you to explore the full documentations of Media Query to know all of what's going on. And that's the important things for me, is to always keep this in mind, to always know that there's a variety of users and context, and you always have to ask yourself if you're supporting every combination. So that's really the point today for me. That's what the purpose of this presentation. And I'll try to give you several tips to help you with that. And the first one that we see very often is constants for a lot of things, like the padding, the sizes, or even the colors, for example. And it's very common because it's easy to just use constant to define our layouts, but it's not great, because if you want to adapt the UI to the current context of the user, you will have to change all of this. And that's why I encourage you to use inherited widget for all the settings you may need for your layouts. So here, for example, I would define a theme with the various padding and the font size, for example. And this way, I'm able to provide different themes regarding the current size of the screen. And this makes my components adaptative, because if the window is bigger, then the fonts will become bigger too, and you will be able to change the layouts. Another tip is to avoid widgets with big build methods, because if you have big widgets when you want to support responsiveness or adaptability, you won't be able to do it easily, because you will have to add if in your build method, and it will become very messy. So what I would recommend is instead to create a lot of small widgets that you will be able to compose to create various layouts. So for example, here I would have dedicated widgets for each small widget, and then regarding the size of the screen, we will be able to lay out them differently. Well, yeah, this one, during all this presentation, you may have wondered, how is it possible to try all of this really easily? Because it's a lot of combinations. If you want to try on all platforms, on all this display size, for each local and for each inputs and performance, each one of those combinations needs a lot of deployments, and it can take a lot of time. So that's exactly why I decided to create a tool for that, which is Device Preview. It's just a widget. You can find it on pub.dev, and it will allows you to simulate a device by rendering a frame and mocking all of the media query. So we will be able to try the responsiveness of your UI, for example. Here you can switch between devices, and it's very handy for that. And it's really, really easy to set up. You just have to embed your app into a device preview, and to add a builder to your material app, and that's it. You have automatically all the tools available when you start your app again. Let's see what it looks like. So here we have an app that I built. Unfortunately, the API is unavailable. The API I use is News API, but they're currently unavailable, so you won't be able to see the articles. But that's not really important here. I just want you to show the various settings you have with device preview. So first, like I said before, you can switch between devices. So here I'm on, the articles are back, cool. So you can choose any device you want here. You have several devices. Don't hesitate to contribute on the repo if you want. Everything is open source. So if you want a new device, you have on the website you will have all the information for contributing if you want to. And you are able to switch between device. So here I'm on Android. On a tablet, for example, and you can see that try your UI against all those parameters. You even have a dynamic device if you want to try the responsiveness of your app. And for example, here you see that we adapted the layout by providing a 2-column layout instead of the tabs. And if we're on a small device, we provide the tabs at the bottom, for example. Device preview also allows you to change the local of the device. So, for example, if I want to select the US, I switch on the US local, and I can test and verify that here, for example, all the articles are loaded from the US newsfeed. Again, if I set to Arabic, and more precisely, it's Egypt. Here I can test that what I said before, that everything is inverted horizontally. So if I make my device a bit bigger, you can see that the title is inverted, and the same for the about frame. And you've got a lot more things to try out. So don't hesitate to say on Twitter what you think about this, or to make issues if you encounter any problem with it. It's really it's a tool I really use often, so I'm pretty proud of it. So I really want to hear what you think about it. And I didn't say that, but this demonstration will be available from my GitHub if you want to look at it a bit more. Okay, thank you everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and even if it was an overview, I hope you now want to add more adaptability to your apps, I hope.
Thank you so much. It was a great talk indeed, and very informative. Please kindly, we have plenty of questions in the YouTube chat. So yep, that's it for now. Thank you so much. And we have all seen the very super famous selfies with Majid in the past 2 days. So we'd like to have him on stage. Please, Majid, can you come?
Yes, I am here again. How's it going?
All good.
Hi, Sarah, too.
Hi.
So I'm gonna actually give you a chance right now, and the selfie yesterday went very well. We got a lot of selfies, so it seems like you like to take a selfie with me. I'm gonna try some new figures with you. So let me, sorry girls, I need to remove you. Okay, now that you have a chance, 10 seconds, go! Oh, how about that? Or maybe All right. Take your selfie, send it to us. This is the last chance. We want you win. But let me also mention one more thing. Where are you right now? You're watching us on probably YouTube or one of the Flutter community channels. Do not forget to like and subscribe, because our mission in Flutter community is to deliver the best content Flutter ever to you. So don't miss this chance to subscribe and like our videos. Apart from that, I need to also mention one thing about Flutter community is that recently we have published Plus packages, which is an awesome initiative from Flutter community. If you haven't seen that, please go to Medium Flutter community and read about the article and see what we've done. Go to our repo, contribute, try it out, and even maybe you can become a sponsor. So this was a great message that I wanted to give you on behalf of the team. So to let you know that we are doing something awesome for the community. Also, don't forget about the tweet and our contest. For now, since this is the last chance, I want to invite again Novel and Sarah, and we have something again surprising for you.
Hello again.
Hello.
Let's get my screen up there. Can we do that? There. We have a quiz for you. So please join us at menti.com with the code you can see there. We have so many prizes that we still need to give away, so we're having one more ad hoc quiz here. So please join us. And there we go.
Wow.
Look at all of those cute emojis. Or those aren't emojis. Avatars.
Come on, people, join.
Yeah.
Woo. Wow. Whoa. That's
Great.
super awesome.
Awesome. Now this is just a very simple Flutter Dart quiz. So I'm sure you'll all do great. Wow. Lots of people joining. Okay. I think we can start now. Here we go. Answer fast to get more points. Oh, I don't think I'm supposed to be showing you this. Two, one. Good. As we know, everything in Flutter is a widget, but there are only two kinds, stateful and stateless. So 2 was the answer. It looks like most of you got it. Well done. All right, we'll go to the next one. Oh, okay. I have to reshare my screen here, apparently, but you should all be able to see the quiz anyways. Which of the following is true about hot reload? So I'm going to unshare my screen and then reshare it after this. Yes, good. Most of you got it. It preserves the state and does not reset the default values. That is what hot restart does. And it is faster than hot restart. I love hot reload. It's great. Okay, I'm going to restart my screen share, but you guys can keep going with the quiz. Next. tricky. And there's my cats. Yes, very good. Most of you got it, but it's okay. It was a tricky question, so if you didn't, don't worry about it. The question operator there, that tells the Dart machine what to do if the first argument is null. So since y is null, it just goes on to the alternative x. So now you know. Well done. Okay, last question. Here we go. Oh, sorry, not last question, 4 of 5. Here we go. There are 3 build modes. That's right. Test is not a build mode. I think there's other frameworks that have test, but not for Flutter. So, well done. It was a tricky one. All right, now it's the last question. Here we go. Oh, that's really small. I'm sorry. I can read it. Is it flutterplugins.dev, pub.dev, or flutterpackages.dev? Yay, almost everybody got it. That's right. Pub.dev is the official source for Flutter and Dart packages. I made up the other ones, but I would like to take this opportunity to mention fluttergems.dev, which is an unofficial curated set of Flutter packages, which we had the creator of on a few days ago, Ashita Prasad. Very cool. Okay, so now we can go and see who won. All right. Good job, guys. Sorry. I was trying to take a screenshot there. But anyways, that's it. Well done. I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back to our lovely moderator. Thank you for participating, everybody. We will be contacting you soon with prizes.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for this awesome quiz. And for now, we will be having our next speaker, Katarina. Katarina is a Flutter developer and a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart. She's a Women Tech Makers Switzerland co-organizer, and she runs her own company, FutureWare. She will be talking today about the effective Flutter development. So please welcome with me, Katarina. Hello, Katarina.
Hi, thank you for introduction.
Thank you for being here today with us. So the stage is all yours. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, I think I can skip introduction part and start directly with the talk. And in this talk, I'd like to share some tips that you can use to have more productive and faster development and to have more effective code. These tips don't require a lot of time. You just need to do this once or get used to some shortcuts. Let's begin. First tip is to use device preview package in your application. It was covered already in previous talk, and therefore I just give a short description to it. It will allow you to make sure that your UI is responsive and works on different screens. And with this page, you can change device orientation, change language of your app, switch between dark light mode without rerunning your application. And it will make your UI development faster and better because your apps will work as expected for different device screens. To apply this package, you need to add device preview package in PubSpec YAML. Afterwards, you need to wrap your application with device preview, and device preview has enabled parameter where you can specify that you'd like to use device preview when you run your application in debug, for example. For this, you can use debug mode constants that will tell you whether it's debug mode or not. As you see, it's easy to apply, and you can make sure that your app looks as expected on different device sizes. Just one package in PubSpec YAML and one widget in your code. Another one is to use shortcuts to generate boilerplate code. It also increases your speed of development. Let's have a look on some of the snippets. We won't have a look at all of them, but you can find more snippets using the link provided in presentation. First snippet to have a look at is to create a stateless widget. You need to start typing STL, and stated widget will be created for you. And you don't need to write all the code by yourself. You just start to type STL, and IDE offers to create a widget for you. And only you need is to provide name of your widget, and you have build override created by IDE for you. You can also have a shortcut to create a stateful widget. For this, you need to start typing STF, and IDE will suggest to create a stateful widget. Class stateful widget and state will be created for you automatically, and it increases a development speed because you don't need to create classes and type overrides by yourself. IDE also provides the third default Flutter shortcut to create Flutter widget with animation controller. As you see, it creates all boilerplate code for you. Animation example state has a single ticker provider state mixin, and animation controller initialized in init state callback and also disposed in disposed callback. And it's very useful if you create animation and in your project. And animation controller is also disposed properly for you. There are some Dart snippets. I won't have a look at all of them in this presentation, just a few that are provided by Dart on default. The whole list of Dart default snippets you can find using the link provided in the presentation. You can start typing fun to create function. Then you can specify all parameters that you need. With switch case snippet, you can easily create switch case statement. And you might see that case clause ends with a break statement, and default clause is also present. Default clause is used when no case clause matched. When you start typing try, IDE offers you to create try catch block. You wrap code in the try that potentially might throw an error. For example, if you fetch data from server, you might face network exception if user doesn't have an internet connection. And one important point here, please don't leave catch empty. When I review code, I often see that catch is just empty. If you don't have error reporting tool and you write just hello world application, at least print the error to the console. Otherwise, you won't be able to see exceptions and you'll be blind about how your application actually works, and you might see behavior that is not expected. You can find different extension basically for VS Code. Probably one suggestion is to use VS Code IDE. And for VS Code, there are extensions that are called Awesome Flutter snippets and Flutter widget snippets. And they provide shortcuts for creating such widgets as stream builder, single child scroll view, animated builder, create your test function, and widget test function, and many more. They are documented with snippets they provide. And if you use a block in your application, you can use a block extension. I think it's available for VS Code and IntelliJ, and it helps you to generate all boilerplate code for you, because you don't need to create qubits or block or states and events by hand. You just type name and all code will be generated for you. Another tip. Dart has a static analysis tool. Static analysis allows you to find problems before executing a single line of code. It's a great tool used to find possible bugs and ensure that code conforms to style guidelines. When you use IDE to develop an app, Flutter tool analyzes the project's Dart code and keeps you in a safe place. For example, when you define floating action button and you forgot to implement onPressed, then IDE warns that the parameter onPressed is required. But anyway, the default settings are light. They don't show all problems and improvements that you can make to follow effective Dart style guide and make your code more performant at the beginning. There are some packages that make your static analysis stronger, and it's easy to add and use them. Here you can see some examples. Pedantic package. This is an official package that was created by Google team, and it provides Dart static analysis that is used by Google internally. And it also includes best practices for code to write. This package follows effective Dart, and some rules are even stricter. Another package that you can have a look is Lint. Lint is a hand-picked, open-source, community-driven collection of Lint rules for Dart and Flutter project, and it also follows effective Dart style guide. There is also effective Dart package, and this package provides also Lint rules that corresponds to effective Dart. For example, let's see how to add pedantic package in your project. To add static analysis to the project, first of all, we need to add pedantic in dev dependencies of pubspec YAML. We add this to dev dependencies because we need it only during development. Then we create analysis options YAML file in our project, and you can see that this is on the same level as pubspec YAML file. Then we need to add and include in our analysis options file YAML, and if you'd like to use the latest version of Lint, add a dependency on the main analysis options file, but you can also specify a custom version of analysis options from pedantic documentation. If you complete all these steps, you'll be able to see in your IDE problems section with some suggestions how you can improve your code. It's very important that your problem section has 0 problems, because it might be potential bugs that needed to be fixed. You can also run Flutter analyze command in your terminal, and all problems will be printed in console, and you can see name of the file, path, and line of the problem. So in ideal, when you run Flutter analyze command in terminal, it should be 0 issues. And for the sake of interest, you can, if you have some pet projects or you work on some projects, you can have a look how many issues you have, or where it's 0, and write in the chat. If you need to add some lint rules or exclude some files from static analysis check, for example, code-generated files, you can do everything in analysis options YAML file. The next tip is also for VS Code users. When you work on project with other developers, for example, it's an open source package with community contributors, you might face a problem when everyone in your team has a different code formatting. For example, length of line. Someone might have 80 characters, another person has 120. And when you get pull requests, you might see a lot of changes because of code formatting. But actual contribution might be just 2 lines. and basically it's pointless because you don't see actual contribution, just reformatting of code. Another example of using project settings is that you'd like to delegate some work to your IDE, such as removing unused imports, auto-formatting code on save, etc. And here project settings come to help. You can specify how your code is formatted for the entire project. And if you use VS Code, you can have settings.json file, which is stored in hidden folder of your project where you can specify some formatting settings. Dart also has recommended settings. To add them in VS Code, in your project in VS Code, you can run command from VS Code command palette, Dart use recommended settings. And settings.json with recommended settings will be created for you automatically and added to user workspace. If you have already workspace settings, you can go to the website with recommended settings. The link is provided on the presentation and choose something that is applicable for your project from recommended settings. The next advice is to use a launch JSON file. It's also applicable for VS Code users. Even though you have a device preview in your project already, sometimes you'd like to run your application on multiple devices and platforms simultaneously. And you can also put a breakpoint on your Dart code, and you can track your code debugging on multiple devices. Launch.json is also stored in hidden VS Code folder in your project where you'll have settings.json file. When you create your launch configuration, you need to specify name of your configuration, type that you run Dart code, request is launch because you'd like to start the project, program is a path to the entry point of Flutter application, and we also need to specify device ID if you would like to run on special device. To find device ID, you can run Flutter devices command in your terminal. And for more information, you can go to Flutter Wiki and find the multi-devices debugging in VS Code topic, or to use the link provided in the presentation. After that, you'll be able to choose a configuration to run your project, and you're also able to run your project on different devices at the same time and switch between debug logs. Another suggestion that might speed up your development is to use dev tools, such as Flutter Inspector, etc. Let's have a look at some dev tools features that might be helpful in daily coding. First one is Flutter Inspector and Select Widget Mode button. The Flutter Widget Inspector is a powerful tool for visualizing and exploring Flutter widget trees. And the inspector can be used for understanding existing layout and diagnosing layout issues. In the Flutter Inspector, there is a tool that is called Select Widget Mode. After pressing on this tool, you can select any UI on the screen and you'll be able to see a widget tree of the selected UI elements. It's also useful if you work on a big project and you are new in the team and you need to fix a UI issue and you don't know exactly where some implementation is in the project. And you can also use Select Widget Mode. And after picking desired UI, your IDE will navigate you to the code with implementation. Another useful tool of Flutter Inspector is slow animations. If you have some custom animations or you'd like to see how navigation between screens happens, this is tool for you. It will slow down on animation to enable visual inspection. Sometimes you need to see how your widgets are placed on the UI with borders, padding, spacers, etc. You can use Debug Pane tool of Flutter Inspector to see all this information on your UI. And this tool is very useful to check whether your widgets were laid out as you expected it. Let's make a wrap up. In this talk, we discussed device preview. Also, we talked about IDE snippets, how to generate old boilerplate code. Then we discussed the static analysis and why it's important to apply it, and also what options you can use and apply in your project. Then we discussed the project settings and launch settings. And in the end, we had a brief look at DevTools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katarina. Kindly check the questions that we have in the YouTube channel. And for now, we will be having Felix. So Felix is a software engineer by day and a software engineer by night at Very Good Ventures, and he's the creator for the block library. Today, Felix will be talking about Cubit and beyond, and guess what? He will be giving a live coding session. So please welcome to the stage, Felix. Hello, Felix.
Hi, how are you?
All good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for the awesome introduction. It's great to be here.
It's super awesome to have you tonight. Okay, so the stage is all yours, and all best of luck.
Thank you. I'll wait for the, can everyone see the slides? Awesome. Sweet. So hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to FlutterVikings for having me. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Cubit, which is still the new kid on the block. And hopefully everyone can kind of familiarize themselves with Cubit if you haven't already gotten a chance to look at it. And I'll also give a little bit of overview about some of the new changes that have been included in v6.1 of Flutter Block. So let's jump right in. I'll do a quick intro. So I'm Felix. I work at Very Good Ventures. We do everything from building Flutter apps to training to team augmentation. So if you're interested in learning more about Very Good Ventures, you could check us out. And as I quickly mentioned, the high-level agenda will be I'm going to do a quick intro of what this Cubit thing is for people who haven't heard or aren't familiar. I'll do a quick overview of what the differences are between Cubit and Block. I want to talk a little bit about what's new in 6.1 and then end off with some live coding at the very end, showing off some of the things we've talked about. So hopefully we can get through everything. So let's get started. So just for everyone who's not familiar with Block, focus on the diagram on the right. Block is basically just, in the context of the library, it's just a component that takes events from the UI. So think about like the user tapping buttons or scrolling or interacting in any way. The UI can notify the block via an event by sending some event asynchronously, and then the block can do some sort of logic and then emit a state, and then the UI can react to the state. So it's this nice feedback loop. And a Cubit is basically what I like to say, like a simplified block, which would be basically if we stripped out the events from blocks. So you'll notice the diagrams look very similar. The main difference is instead of notifying the Cubit via events, we notify the Cubit via calling functions. And as a developer, you expose those functions yourself. So this has some implications, which I will talk about shortly. But at a high level, whenever you think about what's Cubit versus what's Block, just think of Cubit as Block without any events. The concept of events is just like completely removed. So this diagram, it's kind of complicated. Don't worry about reading everything. It's on the blocklibrary.dev website, so you can take a look at it for more detail. But I just wanted to use it to illustrate that the API surface of Cubit is a lot smaller. So really, when you're using Cubit, you're only dealing with one API, maybe two APIs. The emit is going to be your best friend. Whereas with Block, there are way more APIs, and like you get way more control, and it's way more powerful, but at the cost of increased complexity. So I just want to use this to kind of point out that Cubit is a lot more beginner friendly. So if you're not sure which one to use, I would recommend starting with Cubit, and then you can scale up to Block as needed. And don't force trying Block if you're not familiar with some of these concepts like streams and asynchronous programming. Just try Cubit first, and then it should feel natural to move over to Block if you need it. So let's look at some code. What would like the simplest Cubit look like? So it relies on the Block package. So again, it's pure Dart code. And if you're used to using block, it's very familiar, hopefully. Instead of extending the block class, you would extend the Cubit class. And instead of providing the event type and the state type, again, as I mentioned, we removed the concept of events with Cubit. So it's just you define the state. So in this case, this counter Cubit, it's only concerned with managing the state of an integer. And we initialize the initial state of the Cubit to 0. So that's what this super call with 0 is doing. And now, as I mentioned, instead of sending events to the Cubit like we do with block, when you're developing with Cubit, you just define the methods that you want the UI to be able to invoke. And so in this case, the UI can invoke this increment method. And then internally, the Cubit can call this emit function, which updates its state. So anytime you call emit, it changes the Cubit state, and then anyone subscribed or listening to that state gets notified and can react to it. So just in a few lines of code, you can implement a basic counter with Cubit. Just for comparison, here's what it might look like if you use block, just side by side. And you'll notice there's a bit more code and a bit more complexity with the block approach. So as I mentioned, if you're ever unsure of which one to use, just try Cubit first and then scale up to block as needed. This is kind of like a high-level comparison of when to use one versus the other. So as you've probably gathered by now, Cubit, the advantages it has are it's very simple and it has a very concise API. So the amount of code you end up writing is a lot less than when you're using block. But block has some advantages going for it that you kind of lose if you use Cubit. So at a high level with block, because you have this concept of events, you can always trace how did I get to the state that I'm currently at? What events led to that state? And so you have a better sense of how the user got to the state that they're in, which could help for debugging, analytics, et cetera, a number of reasons. And another big advantage that block has is because of all those intermediate APIs that I showed in that complex diagram, you have more fine control over how the events are processed and what order they're processed. You can use RX operators like debounce, switch map, whatever you want to do depending on your use case. And with Cubit, it's kind of like what you see is what you get. You just emit the state and then the UI reacts to the state. And you don't have all of that like middleware-esque stuff. Both of them, though, are easy to test. They both work really well with the block testing package. They're both scalable. They both have full support in the tooling for VS Code and IntelliJ. So in most regards, they're pretty equal. It's just, it comes down to, do you prefer something simple and concise as opposed to something that's maybe more robust and gives you a better sense of how the system is functioning. And that doesn't mean that you have to always pick one or the other. It's very common to want to use both in the same project. So I think it all comes down to the use case and what kind of state you're managing. So hopefully that was a good overview of Cubit, and you have a better sense of now what the difference is and when you might want to use it as opposed to using block. I quickly want to go over some of the changes in v6.1 of Flutter block. So a lot of these changes I want to preface by saying they're basically integrating more deeply or closely with the provider package. As probably a lot of you know, the Flutter block library actually uses the provider library internally. And so this first change is introducing that context.watch extension that if you use provider, you're probably familiar with. So you can now use context.watch with blocks, and that will basically trigger the widget that you call watch in to rebuild anytime the state of the block changes. So it's important to note that you can only do this directly inside of a widget's build method. You'll get an exception if you try to call watch somewhere else. And it's equivalent essentially to having a block builder at the very top level of your build. So I'll show what I mean by that. So basically, you can see in this top snippet, we're using a block builder, which is probably what most people are used to. And in this bottom snippet, we're using the new context.watch extension. And they both do the exact same thing. It's just, one, it's a different syntax, and two, it's kind of like a personal preference thing in this case. But I will talk about some gotchas for watch and where you might not want to use watch or things that you should be careful of in the next slide. But for now, just think of it as kind of like a top-level block builder. So if you break down your widgets into small enough components, using context.watch could reduce some nesting in your code. So things to look out for are, you might think after seeing the previous slide that if you have a situation where you have maybe a scaffold with some body and some buttons and things like that, you can still just define some state that you're watching at the top of your widget and then use it lower in your widget tree. And you could do that, but it's not ideal because when you call context.watch, it's going to trigger a rebuild of the entire widget. So in this case, the entire scaffold is going to get rebuilt, including the app bar, including the floating action button, et cetera. And this will be even worse if you have more widgets in the body. And so it's still really important to want to scope the watch, just like you would want to scope Block Builder, to only the widgets that need to actually rebuild. And so you can still accomplish this. You can either use Block Builder as you normally would, or you can use context.watch within the context of another builder widget. And that will localize those rebuilds to just the builder and not the scaffold, app bar, and floating action button in this case. So just be mindful of anytime you call context.watch, it's going to basically mark that entire widget as being dependent on the state. And so that entire widget will rebuild every single time. And you can use builders to scope those rebuilds as opposed to having the entire widget rebuild. So something to keep an eye out for. As a recap, previously, you might have seen somewhere in some code bases, or maybe in your own code base, you have this type of code where you're using context.block, which is now deprecated in 6.1. This is bad for a number of reasons, mainly because the context.block extension would not actually listen for state changes and trigger rebuilds. And so this widget could easily become outdated and show some like out-of-date state. The right way to handle this would be to use a block builder before 6.1. And in 6.1, you can either use a block builder or you can use context.watch so that you can get that reactive UI and always have it be up to date with the latest block state. Now, another feature that since like June of 2019, people have been opening issues for is multi-block builder. A lot of people are like, oh, I have nested block builders, nesting hell. I want to have a multi-block builder because I have a multi-block provider and a multi-block listener. Why isn't there a multi-block builder? And so is there a multi-block builder? The answer is sort of. So with context.watch now, you can kind of make your own multi-block builder. So again, there is no multi-block builder widget in Flutterblock, but now with the new context.watch extension, you can make your own multi-block builder just by defining a builder and then calling watch on any number of blocks that you want. And you'll notice this scales because you don't have to have this crazy level of nesting every single time you want to add a new dependency on a new block state. You can define them all in line and then return a widget that depends on, in this case, the state of block A, B, and C. So if any of those states change, the widget will be rebuilt. So you do have multi-block builder support now without having that nesting. Maybe there'll be a formal widget for it, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. But for now, just know that that is an option in cases where you do have UI that's dependent on multiple states. Next up, after context.watch, it was only natural that we include context.read. So again, context.watch and context.read are essentially replacements for context.block. It's deprecated, like I mentioned. And so context.read is just like context.watch, except for you do not subscribe to changes. So your widget will not rebuild whenever the state of the block changes. And you're not, for that reason, allowed to use context.read directly inside of the build method. You should mainly use context.read either if you're outside of the build method, like in this case, we're inside of a Lambda, so we're in the on-press, not inside of the build, or you can use it outside of, like if you want to access the state in init state or some other part of the widget. So again, does not trigger rebuilds when the state changes, and it should mainly be used for notifying the blocks or qubits of some sort of change in the UI. Recap. So before using the context.block extension, you could write this code where you're accessing the block on every single build, but you're only using it in this on-press callback. And this isn't ideal because you're wasting, like this lookup is happening way more frequently than it needs to happen. So always try to localize and scope your lookups to only the parts where they're actually really needed. So prefer to look up directly in the on-press callback as opposed to at the top level of the build method. And using context read, that would look something like this. So only do the lookup when the user actually taps the button. Don't do it unnecessarily on every single rebuild because that could just be extra lookups for no reason. The last big extension from provider is context.select. So it's fairly common to have complex block states and have parts of the UI that only rely on some small part of that state. So take hypothetically an example of a user block, which is managing some sort of user model. And you have some sort of widget that is just like a greeting widget. So it only renders some sort of greeting to the user, like hello, and then the name of the user. That widget only cares about the name of the user. It doesn't care about the entire user. You might have other properties like age, I don't know, country, language, etc. On the user object. I'm just making up stuff. But in this case, if it only cares about name, you can use the context.select extension, pass the block that you want to access, and return the property or the part of the state that you care about. And then this will, one, give you access to that part, but two, trigger rebuilds only when that part of the state has changed. So if, for example, in this case, the user's age has changed, this widget will not rebuild. It will only rebuild if the user's name has changed. So whenever you want to rebuild in response to part of a block state, you can use context.select. It's going to be probably pretty common that people still need to like go back and maybe reference some of these slides. So I'll put the link up. But as like a quick decision tree, the most common misconception I think will be whenever you want to access state, what should you do? Should you use context.read or context.watch? So I just want to recap. If you're within the build method, always use context.watch. If you're outside of the build method, always use context.read. And by outside of the build method, it could be a function that's inside of a widget that's inside of the build method. When I say inside of the build method, I mean literally directly inside of the build method and not in some nested closure. So context.watch whenever it's directly in build, otherwise context.read, and you should be good for most cases. Again, this will also throw an exception if you use it in the incorrect place. So it should be very straightforward to quickly kind of update. If you accidentally use context.watch where you should have used context.read, you should see an error that's saying something to that extent, like please use context.watch instead or whatever, and then you can update and you're good to go. So switching gears away from the Flutter block updates, there's one update to the block test package that I wanted to call out. So to set the scene for this, it's somewhat common to have blocks that you don't necessarily have like a simple test path. Like for example, let's say hypothetically we had a counter block, but something special happened when we incremented it from 99 to 100, right? The state could start at 0, but something different happens when you go from 99 to 100. How would you test that using the block test package? Previously, you would have to do something like this in your act where you like kind of prepare your block to be in the state that you want it to be in. You can actually do it in the build as well. And like it kind of gets messy, it gets out of hand, it takes away from the readability of the test, and it's also code that you might have to add over and over and over again if you're preparing the block the same way for multiple tests. And so to kind of combat that, we added this seed property to the block test. So you can still say, hey, I want to test the counter block in this example, but before I do anything, I want to seed it with a state of 99. And so even though normally the counter block initial state might be 0, in the context of this test, the initial state will become 99. So right before you call act, the block will have a state of 99. You can call act and add the event or call the method on the Cubit, and then just expect only the transition that you care about in this case, and not necessarily have to have all the noise of like getting to where you want it to be when the test started off. So hopefully that helps simplify a lot of tests and reduces a lot of boilerplate and like preparation code in your blocks. So definitely check that out. It's just an optional property on block test. And yeah, that's it for testing. So again, all of this and more is in the blocklibrary.dev documentation. You can go to the migration guide, and there should be detailed explanations of why these changes were made, as well as how to actually migrate from older versions of block to newer ones. So I highly recommend checking that out. And for this next bit, I'm just going to go through some live coding to kind of illustrate some of the concepts that we talked about. All of this can be found at my GitHub, so github.com/Phalangel, and then the name of the talk, Cubit and Beyond. And you should see there's the slides for this talk, as well as in the example directory will be the code that we're working on. So I'll leave this up for a second if anyone is curious and wants to take a look at that. And just to recap, I'm going to basically take a static, non-functional counter application, and I want to walk through first how would you add a block to it, and then how could we refactor that block to be a Cubit, and then look at some of the extensions that we talked about and how they might help refactor some of the code and simplify things. So hopefully everyone's had enough time to look at the link. I'm going to flip over to VS Code and my iOS simulator. Let me make things a little bit bigger, maybe. So as I mentioned, this is super simple. Probably everyone's already seen this and built way cooler apps, but just for the sake of kind of illustrating just the concepts that we talked about and not having a lot of other noise, I'm sticking to the usual counter which can fit in like 20 lines of code so everyone can see everything. So I'm just going to go through it for people who might not be familiar. Basically, the entry point is always our main function, and we're calling run app in this case and passing a widget. In this case, the my app widget is just using material and rendering a material app with a counter page. And counter page is just another widget, which is rendering a scaffold with an app bar, text widget that's hard coded to 0 right now, which is what we see in the middle. And then a floating action button, which doesn't do anything when I tap on it. And so we can see that it doesn't do anything when I tap on it because I'm tapping on it, nothing's happening, right? So the first thing I want to do is pull in the Flutter block package. So I'll switch over to the pubspec.yaml, and I'll pull in 6.1 and run a Flutter pub get or Flutter packages get to pull in the dependency. Now, the next thing that I highly recommend if you're using Block and Cubit is to get the VS Code extension. If you're using VS Code, there's also an extension for Android Studio or a plugin for Android Studio. And it'll give you some useful snippets and also commands that you can run to just generate the block code and Cubit code for you, which I'll go over in a second. And so I'm going to put that to use right now by just below our main, I'm going to type block, and I'm going to get the snippet recommended from the block VS Code extension. I'm going to hit enter, and then now I can give it the name that I want, so counter block. Now, blocks need an event and a state, right? So I'm going to change the state type to be an integer because we're just managing a simple int here. The initial state will be 0. Before I forget, let me import Flutter block. I don't know why it's not. Did it not download? Hello. Flutter block. Let's try this again. There we go. So I'm going to pull in the Flutter block package, which exports the block class. You can also get the block class just from the block package if you're using regular Dart and not Flutter. And now we have to define a counter event. So in this case, I'll use an enum, but you can use whatever you want to define the events and states. And then the last thing we have to do is implement map event to state. So in this case, it's very simple. I'm just going to use a switch statement and then case counter event increment. I'm just going to yield state +1. And in this case, whenever I yield, I'm pushing a new state, and then whoever is listening to this block will get notified of that state change. So I'm accessing the current state of the block, updating or adding 1 to it, and then yielding the whole thing, which pushes it out of the block, and then whoever is subscribed or listening to changes in the block can get notified. And so just from saving this, like nothing has changed. I can still not use my counter app, right? I have to actually use this block somehow. So I'm going to go down to the counter page, which is the one that actually needs access to the block. And I'm just going to either command dot, or you can use this little light bulb. And from the block VS Code extension, you can wrap with block provider. And I will wrap with a counter block. And now block provider, for those of you who might not be familiar, it's just making this counter block instance available in the subtree. So now any of counter page and the children of counter page can look up this instance of the counter block and have access to it. And so we don't need the context in this case, so I'll just make that an underscore. And now we're almost there. We need to reformat this a little bit. And again, I'm going to do wrap with, this time block builder, because I want this text widget to rebuild anytime the state of the block changes. And I'm going to say it's going to react to the counter block, and the state is an integer. And now I can remove this hard-coded 0 finally and put the state, which is going to be 0 at the beginning because that's our initial state of the block. So now I should be able to save this and nothing will change, but it's cool because I'm no longer hard coding in the UI the 0. And to make it all functional, we have to do something in the onPressed of this button. So I'm going to use the extension that we talked about, context.read, and I'm going to tell it the block that I want to look up. Since I'm not directly in the build method, I'm in the onPress callback of the floating action button. And then now I can add the event that I want. So counter event.increment, and I should be able to see everything is functioning properly. So that's cool. And this is all using block, and you have the power of RX transformations and tracking events and things like that. But let's say in this case, you realistically probably don't need that for a counter, right? Like you might not care about the events, and you just want to have some simple state management just to manage the state and logic for this counter. So how could we refactor this to use Cubit? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all instances of counter block and rename them to counter Cubit so that we don't confuse ourselves. I'm going to extend Cubit instead of block, And as I mentioned earlier, Cubit has no concept of events. So I'm going to delete the event. I'm going to delete counter event here. And I'm going to delete map event to state. And now instead of define or overriding map event to state, I'm just going to define whatever functions I want. So in this case, I just want one function called increment. And then I'm going to do the same thing that we had in the block, except for instead of using yield, I can use emit. And I will say anytime increment gets called, update the internal state of the qubit by adding 1 to it, and then emit that whole new state. So now again, the block provider code doesn't have to change. I'm still providing the qubit. The block builder code doesn't have to change. I'm still reacting to state changes in the qubit. The only thing that I have to change here is instead of adding an event, I can just call increment, right? And then we have our working counter still. So we've simplified the code pretty significantly in this case, and we still have our working counter. And now I want to really quickly touch on how we can use some of the extensions like context.watch in this case to even further simplify some of this code. So the first thing that I recommend doing is trying to decompose your widgets as much as possible. So in this case, this counter page is kind of doing a lot of things, like it's rendering the scaffold, and then it has this text widget, but this text widget is actually reacting to state from the block. So I think it would simplify things to just take this widget out of here. Maybe let's create a new widget called counter text. And then let's define, using the snippets that you saw in the previous talk, a stateless widget, counter text. And then now I can return the block builder that I had before. I need to take my theme out of there and drop it in here. But now we've slightly refactored the counter page to use a new widget, counter text. And in your app in practice, if this counter text is only going to be used in this one part of the app, you can prefix it with an underscore to denote that it's private, so that outside of this class you can't access, or outside of this file you can't access this widget. So that's something that you can keep in mind. And if I save, let me just do a hot restart for the sake of just making sure everything is still working. Great. And now we're in the situation where we've decomposed the widget tree so much that we're left with a widget where the top level widget that it's returning is a block builder. And this is a perfect scenario where you can refactor this to use context.watch. So instead of having a block builder here, I can just define the state. So I'll just say count equals context.watch, and then the type of block, or qubit in this case. And now I can just move this widget up, delete all of the block builder code, and then replace state with count, hot reload, and everything is still working. So this widget is still subscribing and rebuilding whenever changes to the counter qubit state occur, but hopefully it's easier to read. It kind of looks similar to how you would use theme or how you might use other inherited widgets in Flutter. And it reduces that nesting if you have especially multiple types of blocks or qubits that you want to react to in a single spot, for example. This will drastically reduce the amount of rebuilds. If I wanted to do it all inline, instead of using this counter text widget, I could still accomplish that and not force the entire scaffold and floating action button to rebuild just by using a builder widget. And so builder takes a builder with the context. And now here, if I wanted to, I can drop this code and everything should still be happy and work. And I'm still achieving the exact same thing. I'm still scoping the rebuilds only to this part of the widget tree. So it kind of is up to you and your use case which approach you want to take. But yeah, context.watch in this case could be fairly useful, especially if you have dependencies on multiple blocks. So that's kind of where I will stop. And yeah, if anyone has questions, I'll be around in the chat to answer them. And let me go back to my slides. So again, check out the slides and source code on my GitHub if you want to go back over them at your own pace. And thanks again to everyone for tuning in and for FlutterVikings for hosting me. You can follow me on Twitter or check out my GitHub for this and other talks and examples. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Felix. We will be taking some questions from the audience.
Sounds good.
So the first question is, yes, what about a mixed approach when you want to trigger the API call using function Cubit approach, but later you want to apply filters to streams and notify subscribers, Blockway?
So yeah, it's a good question. You can still use Cubit and apply filters and streams to notify subscribers, because at the end of the day, the output of both blocks and qubits is still a stream. So you can even hypothetically use like Stream Builder and pass your qubit in, and use RxDart and modify the state stream however you'd like. So you're not limited to only doing that with block, but it is a lot easier to do things like perform operations on the incoming event stream. So for example, if you want to implement like a search functionality where you debounce and not necessarily query the API on every single key press, block would be a better fit for that. And I have an example on the GitHub, on my GitHub called Fluttersaurus, which I made for a previous talk. So you can check that one out as an example of how you might want to use Cubit and block together in one code base. But hopefully that answers your question. You can still apply filters to qubits as well, since they are streams. It's just, it mainly comes into play when you want to modify the event stream, so the incoming stream as opposed to the outgoing stream.
Awesome. Let's see if we have another question. And the second question says, should you use controllers in stateful widgets or move it on block or qubit?
So I think that you should always keep things like animation controllers and scroll controllers and things in your stateful widgets, because those things are managing your UI and they're strictly tied to Flutter. So rule of thumb, I would say, is if you ever have to import Flutter or anything from Flutter in your block, then you should probably stop and think about what are you actually pulling into the block, because ideally the block should be pure Dart and independent of your presentation. So yeah, in most cases, you should avoid pulling in controllers into blocks and qubits, and keep those in stateful widgets. And even for things that don't have any business logic, like animating or managing scrolling and all that stuff, even though there's some logic there, there's a difference, in my opinion, between business logic and presentation logic. And so it's okay to have some logic in your widgets as long as it's related to how you present the UI and not like calculations or API calls and things like that. Those you can move into your block, but for presentation-based logic, feel free to keep that. That's what stateful widgets are for, in my opinion.
Awesome. Another question. What is the differences between the qubit and the river pod?
So you have to ask Remy to go more in depth on RiverPod, but high level RiverPod is more for dependency injection, so kind of more equivalent to what Provider is. And so right now there is no direct integration with RiverPod and Qubit or Block, but maybe there will be in the future. But they kind of serve different purposes. Qubit would be more analogous to like the state notifier library and less to RiverPod. RiverPod I would just think of as the way that you're providing your dependencies throughout your Flutter application. So kind of more similar to what Provider is doing in the case of Flutter Block as opposed to Qubit or Block itself. So the two can be used together and they're not necessarily trying to accomplish the same goal.
Awesome.
Good question.
Yeah. And the second question is, I'd like to take this opportunity and ask the audience to please kindly put your questions in the chat box for Felix. We have Felix, people! Come on! So this question says, what about Qubit and inherited widget?
Yeah, so that's again what we use Provider for. So Provider is basically syntactic sugar for inherited widgets, so making it easier to define your own inherited widgets. But there's nothing stopping you from making your own block provider or qubit provider or whatever, just using raw inherited widget and then making your qubit or block available in the entire widget tree. So that's already what Provider is doing and why the Flutter block library is using Provider for the implementation, because it's a standard that is a Flutter favorite and recognized by the Flutter community as one of the most popular and useful packages. And so it made sense to just use those same conventions and follow the same practices. But there's nothing against stopping you from building your own inherited widget and accessing your qubit using your own inherited widget. It's something that I would recommend everyone do actually, because it'll give you a sense of what is actually Provider doing for me, and then you have that appreciation for what you actually get from using a package like Provider. Because you'll see the boilerplate and complexity of defining your own inherited widget, and it's not necessarily the most fun thing to do. So yeah, you can definitely do it, but that's why we have Provider as a dependency in Flutter Block.
Great. So I have a So okay, I'll ask my question.
Sure.
What challenges do you see in the block library?
What challenges?
Yep.
It's a good question. I think one of the biggest challenges that I always struggle with is there's so many feature requests, so many people are asking for changes to be made, and just figuring out what we want the direction of the library to be and what things to say yes to and what things to say no to is always a big struggle. And so it's constantly like something that I'm fighting with. Like, everyone has different use cases and everyone wants the library to evolve into something slightly different. And so trying to balance everyone's requests and needs and also have something that is somewhat stable over time and generic and not overly complicated is something that I struggle with, because I would hate for the library to, like, people already think of Block as being pretty complex and pretty advanced. So I'm always mindful of not including way too much functionality in like 100 ways to do the same thing, because I know that that's going to become even more confusing, especially for newcomers and beginners. So trying to basically balance feature requests with a simple API that's easy to use and intuitive is, I think, one of the biggest challenges.
Awesome. So the last question will be, what are some tips and tricks for developers who want to start with your libraries, especially Cubit and or Block?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think,
any advice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would recommend first going to blocklibrary.dev and reading. There's a good bit on like core concepts for Block and for Flutter Block that you should understand before writing any code, and it covers the basics of things like working with streams and understanding kind of like the core API. Things like a block is actually a qubit, and so they share a lot of common functionality, and there's some useful diagrams, including the ones that I mentioned today on there. So I'd recommend going through that documentation, and then at that point, it's up to you, depending on what kind of learner you are. If you prefer reading tutorials and following along with code, there's a lot of examples and tutorials, again, on the blocklibrary.dev website. But if you're more of a visual person and you like watching videos and people live coding and things like that, I can recommend RezoCoder, for example, has some awesome content on getting started with Block. There's another new channel on YouTube called Flutterly, where there's like a Block Zero to Hero series where the author basically goes through, like, literally assuming you know nothing about Block and Flutter, walking you through all the basics and trying to help you understand the concepts in a really visual way. So I think there's a number of different ways that people can approach learning. It just depends on what kind of learner you are. But I think no matter what, you can always join. I'll share the link for the Block Discord server, and we have a decent sized community there that are always online and able to ask questions. So I'd say, like, just try it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out either to me on Twitter or on Discord, and we'll try to help everyone as much as we can and make development as hopefully pleasant as possible.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Felix.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And now we will be having Christopher. So Christopher, he's from the Flutter team, and he will be mainly like answering any questions that you will put in the chat box. So please welcome Christopher.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
First, I wanted to say thanks, Felix. That was a really great talk. It's a really cool project. But my name is Christopher Fujino. I'm on the Flutter team. I work on the CLI tool, and I'm also a release engineer. We just got out a beta release this morning, so after the conference, go check that out. But I'm very, very glad to be here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to see more of the talks, but this is I'm scheduled last because this is like sort of the first thing I do in the morning. I'm in California. But
awesome.
This seems like a really cool conference.
Thank you. So yeah, we will be taking questions from the audience. So please, if you have any questions for Christopher, please write them in the chat box. So the first question for tonight is, how will you implement nav2 with Flutter with the Flutter block?
That is a very good question. That probably would be better for Felix. Yeah, I'm sorry. I do not know. The Nav 2.0, I actually haven't even played around. I saw one of my coworkers' presentations on Nav 2.0, and it looks really cool, but I have not actually built an app with it yet, so I can't really comment.
Okay, and Flutter and WebAssembly.
Flutter and WebAssembly. This is it's a very exciting prospect. I cannot say any plans, concrete plans that the Flutter team has for it, but I can say that it's definitely technically possible to deliver a Flutter app on WebAssembly. Right now, if you have a beta Flutter for Web app, one of the options is to use, there's basically two different rendering options for Flutter for Web. The first is sort of like DOM-based, and the other uses CanvasKit, which is a WebAssembly compiled version of Skia, which is the rendering engine that like mobile or desktop Flutter apps will use. So CanvasKit is Skia compiled to WebAssembly. You could imagine that, yeah. So and WebAssembly does seem to be a very exciting platform with a lot of potential, not only on the web but on other platforms too, because of just its ubiquity and security. So and I could also just see like this is something like you could probably play around with, like an open source contributor or team could play around with getting a WebAssembly embedder. So yeah, I mean, I can't say anything for sure, but it's very exciting, and I would love to be able to play around with Flutter on WebAssembly.
Okay, the next question. Any plan for Windows-specific components like Cupertino for iOS?
I don't. I think right now. So for desktop, the focus is on getting the sort of core feature set to be as robust as like the mobile. And I think in terms of components, that would be something along the line when sort of all the core features, things like accessibility and input, are all robust and stable. I would say that also I think this would be something great for a community package, because I think, yeah, it's basically maintaining material, and Cupertino is a full-time job, just because like keeping these UI kits up to date is it's a moving target. So yeah, I mean, I could just see this being something that's really great for being filled in by the community.
Great. Any tips on how to get started with contributing to Flutter without being overwhelmed? I think this is a great question.
Yes, I agree. This is a great question. It's actually something I've been thinking about a lot. The first thing I would say is start with a doc change, because it's just like, I guess my advice would be the same as like when I started a new job, because I think when I start a new job, it's always scary and so overwhelming, and it's like, how do I even make a commit? So I would say, yeah, just start with, we get a lot of commits that are just finding typos and comments. So unfortunately, if you search the code base, you can probably find one. And also, like, read our wiki. On GitHub, Flutter, we have a wiki with a lot of different pages, including one for tree hygiene, which basically explains how to make a change. And I would say, sort of do that change, figure out the process for making a change. And then once you get that, and sort of learned how our Git tree works, then start with the best kinds of bug fixes are like bugs that you actually run into, because then you don't have to like reproduce it. Like if you just go hunting the issue tracker for a random bug, then you have to like start with like, okay, what am I trying to do? How do I reproduce this? And then how do I fix this? Whereas if you're actually just building a Flutter app and then you're like, this doesn't seem to be working correct, and then you can, the great thing is if you have one of our IDE plugins, you can just step from your Flutter app, you can step directly into the Flutter framework source code. So you can say, that didn't do what I thought it was going to do. You can jump to the definition of the method and then look at the actual source code and see, okay, how is this implemented? Oh, I think there's actually a bug here. It's not handling this case. And then, and the last thing on that I would say is if you're making a non-trivial change, you should file an issue first and sort of like outlining out your approach, and then, get some feedback on that rather than just submitting a really long change. And then maybe the maintainer is going to say, oh, but we actually can't do it that way because of certain reason. So yeah, this is what I do basically. Like I will file an issue first to make sure that my change is likely to get accepted.
Awesome. So when will Flutter be ready to write apps for Apple M1 CPU?
So I believe that, so in case you don't know, the Apple M1 CPU, that's the, Apple just announced new Macs that use ARM CPU architecture. And so these Macs are going to come with Rosetta 2, which is sort of like a compatibility layer between ARM and basically you'll be able to run Intel binaries on these ARM devices. And so with that, most of Flutter works. And my coworker has gotten debugging Flutter with an actual device working. I believe that the simulator, the iOS simulator doesn't work. So I would say very much like if you buy it day one, and I think there's going to be some kinks, and I suspect for most developer tasks, you're going to have to figure out a lot of things, but I'm sure the people that are buying this on day one, they like to be on the cutting edge. So.
Awesome. Would you like to hear more info and opinions / experiences on the Google Play, on the Google Pay app built using Flutter? What impact it could make for future Flutter products on Google landscape?
Well, I cannot publicly speculate on future Google strategy, but I'll just say the Flutter team is really excited about the Google Pay app, and you know, a lot of people have been working really hard to help the Google Pay team, and yeah, it's really exciting. So that's all I'll say.
Cool. When will Mac OS support platform views? When will Mac OS support platform views?
Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that. I am not part of the desktop team, so.
Okay. Another question that we have is there a plan for making Flutter to HTML transpiler for Flutter web builds?
So I'm not, there are no plans that I know of. I'm not even sure if that's technically possible, because, well, for several reasons. First, Flutter's layout system is inherently different from the web's. So like, I don't know that you could just do a direct Flutter to CSS conversion. And also because Flutter apps are, whereas the DOM is like static and Flutter apps are completely composed of code and they're dynamic. Yeah, I think, I'm not sure that you could create a one transpiler that would be robust against every Flutter app and map it to HTML. But there's a lot of really smart people out there, so I could be proven wrong.
Cool. So yes, our second surprise for tonight. So it will be having the Flutter Whisperer, aka Simon, and
Hello.
Evanji.
Hey, Simon.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi, Christopher. Hi,
Hello.
Simon.
I was actually I was edging to answer some of these questions in the background here. Yeah, just on the M1 thing, I know that Flutter 1.2.2.4 hotfix stable was released with support to target the new silicone, so you can build apps that will, as Christopher said, they use the Rosetta, but they will at least build and you can release for the M1. So that's an important thing right now that you can do right this minute. So. And then someone else asked a question about shaders. Apparently there was some shaders problems, and there's a separate page on the documentation about shader warm-up. I will put that in the chat. I think I can do that. There we go. I think everyone gets that. And that will take you to what you need to do to check the skier warm-up and set up the sort of cache warm-up to improve initial frames of graphics and animations when your app first starts up. So yeah, there you go. Oh, have we got new questions coming in? Sorry.
Top issue on GitHub, reusing a state logic across multiple stateful widgets is very difficult. As soon as that logic relies on multiple life cycles. Any plans on that?
I don't know. I can talk. I'm going to mention my point here. I don't see a problem with this. If you need to reuse logic across multiple stateful widgets, you can just use a mixin. They can all have their own init state and dispose state function. You know, dispose functions. So. I mean, there's plenty of ways of doing this yourself. I mean, I don't know of any plans for any new widgets relating to this.
Is it possible to build Flutter web components to be used within another front-end framework? Interesting.
Actually, I sorry to I hope anyone, please anyone else answer this as well. But I know Rody Davis did web components using Flutter. So if you look up Rody Davis's work, he's actually Google Developer Advocate now for the material design team. But you can go find his work on Twitter, and I think he links off to some of his previous work with making Flutter work as a web component. So you should be able to use that in other things like Angular and various other sort of nice web component-based webby languages that I have no idea about.
Any good practices or consideration prior to submit a Flutter app to the App Store? What do you think, Christopher?
I think that I am not an expert on submitting apps to the App Store.
I mean, neither am I. I was going to say, my answer to this would have been read the App Store guidelines, because they have the Apple App Store has this set of guidelines. You must do this. You mustn't say you're going to do one thing in your app and do another, and betray the user's trust and all these kind of things. I mean, they're your good practices. They're your things that they say you must do. But I mean, if there's any practical things, obviously test your app, make sure it works before you submit it, right? You don't want crashes coming back.
Yeah, I would say if any advice, like if you have like a big release date, just test it early.
Awesome. What do you think, Evangeline?
Yeah, actually, I'm not a big expert in App Store because Android, all this one left. So actually, I have a big question to Christopher, because Christopher works in the build team. So it's about Bazel support, because the issue with Bazel was closed somewhere like in March. And and this is the cool for anyone who doesn't know. Bazel is a super cool build system. It already supports Android and iOS, and yeah, this is really nice.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with the Bazel issue that was closed. What was the issue? Just supporting?
Yeah, just supporting, yeah.
Well, I don't, so I'm not familiar with that issue. I guess, I'm not sure, is this like only an Android app or Android? I'm not sure the use case for Bazel for a Flutter app.
Well, I would say.
I mean, I'm on the CLI team, so I'm hoping that building a Flutter app is pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Yeah, yeah. So Bazel just helps if you have I don't know, distributed builds. If you if your Flutter application, I don't believe that someone so far has so big Flutter application, but still, what if your application is so big that you want to build it somewhere on the farm or data center or something like this? Maybe it's not the case right now.
Well, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that the tool, the Flutter CLI tool, supports a distributed build. Like, I think the assumption is that a single invocation of the tool would do the entire build process. And but I mean, I would love to hear on, and maybe I'll check out that issue later if people are specifically running into that problem.
I've got a question for you, Chris.
Sure.
Flutter generate. What is it? Are we going to get code generation as a prime candidate for during Flutter builds?
You know what? I am not familiar. Is that in production right now?
So
I'm not familiar with that command.
So as far as I know, that there's a library. I'm gonna forget it right now. There's actually I think it's called Flutter Gen, and it generates resource assets and things, and it's quite popular. And I know that now links in with the build system, which is quite handy. So there's under the YAML file, you can have under the Flutter heading, you can have another heading called generate, set to true, and it will run generators, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's in stable or dev or beta. I'm not.
Yeah. I cannot. I've heard a little bit about that. I cannot comment on that.
Okay.
But I think I do know, like, as a general principle, code generation is obviously it's very powerful, but it can also be it can add a lot of complexity and difficulty in reasoning about Flutter builds. So, but yeah, in answer to your question, I don't know.
Another question that we have is, I'm familiar with OpenGL shaders warm-up, thanks, but I was asking about Metal Engine, because now all iOS devices uses Metal, and it's a huge issue for me and production apps. Thanks. What do you think, Chris?
I do not know anything about Metal, unfortunately.
I was going to say, I don't even use iOS, so I can't really speak to it exactly. But I'm told that Flutter uses Metal, and then, under the Skier uses Metal on the hood, and they've got the support for that, and you should be able to release on Metal fine. If you're having problems, please raise an issue ticket. I'm sure the Flutter team want to know about if there's any problems with running Flutter on Metal-based devices. So yeah.
What do you think, Evan? Oh, we have another question. What are plans of Flutter?
It's always going to be no comment, so
Yeah, no comment. I mean, yeah, you could Google Flutter and Fuchsia. That's what I would say.
How about Flutter support on other smart devices, most preferably Apple Watch or Google Nest Hub? Are there any plans to extend the development possibilities on these? What do you think?
Apple Watch are supported?
I believe Apple Watch. I know that we have an Apple Watch integration test. I guess you'd have to check the website to see if it's officially supported, but I think it will.
Well, actually, yeah, sorry, there is a support article on the website, so Apple Watch definitely supported.
Awesome.
I was going to say, I've actually been building recently on Android Watch as well. Obviously, that's possible. Yeah. But I have to mention this. So if you go look at if you are interested in integrating with different targets, and the ones that are supported by the Flutter team, there is documentation on the Flutter wiki that describe downloading what's called the Flutter embedder. It's part of the SDK, and it's the interface between the Flutter engine and the host shell. And you can go implement that yourself. And in fact, Shinmei from the Flutter engine team implemented one for Raspberry Pi, and you can go use that as an example. So if you want to run Flutter on custom hardware, it's perfectly possible. Especially if they already run Linux, and they run ARM or one of the already sort of hardware targets they have. So go ahead, you can go integrate it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think also specifically with Watch, I think we didn't need to write a new embedder. I think there was just it was a issue of adding new Xcode flags. So I would definitely encourage, if there's some specific device that Flutter doesn't officially support, just play around and see if if it's just a matter of adding the flags, then it's probably in terms of officially supporting it, it's just we didn't get around to doing that. We accept pull requests.
I was literally going to say that. About your pull requests.
So setting up multiple flavors and deliverables is quite hard on iOS. Are there any plans or ideas on adding this within the Flutter create command?
Not that I know of. You can open a feature request.
I know, right? Open up a feature request. Yeah, even better, add it yourself and send a PR.
Yes.
I mean, there's only so many hands on the Flutter team, right? So,
will we get any support for mirrors at any point? What do you think, Everton?
Mirrors.
Everton.
I think the reason because why we don't have mirrors, because back in the old days mirrors were in the language, of course, so it's reflection. But they dramatically increase the size of the application.
There's also a case here where Dart can be obfuscated. So Dart mirrors doesn't make any sense in that sense. Once it's been compiled, once it's compiled to native code, the whole sort of idea of having mirrors and making sort of references to compiled code doesn't make any sense anyway.
Yeah, I think also specifically that's all correct, and the compiler can't do any tree shaking if there are mirrors.
Yeah, and actually this is the holy war question because someone is saying that reflection by itself is bad.
I think it's the case of the case good or bad. That's not even what we're going to talk about here. But I do want to mention that I think the reason where that comes from is the fact that whenever you make a call on reflection, you're spending time looking up the values you're looking for, which increases your runtime. So it will slow down your application whenever you have to use, to a very microscopic degree, but if you repeatedly do that in a loop or it's in some sort of fundamental sort of something under the hood on your application, then that's going to slow down your app. And I think that's why that's the give and take that you've always had with dealing with reflection.
Yeah. I have a question to Christopher, and I hope that you will share the experience. So about the CLI tools, how do you guys test them? I mean, it's just a unit tests, or you have some end-to-end tests, but some commands, they can be really slow and you have to wait a lot of time before they, and replication and other stuff. So what is your rule of thumb for testing?
Yes, well, I mean, you pretty much summarized it. Like, obviously we have a quite extensive unit testing, but yeah, and we do have integration testing because a lot of what the CLI tool does is shell out to other applications, right? So unit tests are sort of limited value. But then, yeah, it's a very difficult problem because obviously those kinds of integration tests are going to be slow and or flaky. So I think it's sort of trying to find a good balance between writing reliable tests and sometimes we do get like an integration test will just hang, and and it's interacting with some like OS process. So, but I think, yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about that, but we could maybe chat offline.
Maybe talk on the next conference.
Yeah, testing a CLI app. Yeah.
Last question.
And what is the question?
Dun, 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 dun.
Are there any plans on using Flutter for the UI of widgets, like iOS widgets on the home screen?
Okay, I can answer this. I did a talk about this and went terribly wrong. You can probably find it on YouTube, and nothing worked. But I've actually been experimenting with making Flutter work with Android home screen widgets. The problem we have with, I'm assuming very similar with iOS. I do not know about iOS widgets. I do not claim to know anything about iOS widgets. However, the problem you have is anything that you export out of Flutter is only going to be, because it's running external process, can only be very limited in its structure. So in most cases, it's just an image view. So it's a picture of buttons and things. It's not actually the real controls from Flutter. But it should be possible, theoretically possible, to have your widgets be rendered and then the image of those widgets be represented on the home screen. So if you wanted like a nice custom clock, you could still do that with Flutter, and you could do those kind of things. And I'm going to be releasing a library for Android specifically at some point when I get time. What's next?
Awesome. So I believe this is it for tonight. Thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you so much, Flutter Whisperer. and for now, we will be heading to announcing the winners. Drum roll. Hello again.
Hello.
Avengers Assembly.
We are back. So that's probably the last thing that's gonna happen today. It was such a great day. 3 days full of awesome contents, great people, amazing attendees. Thank you for all of you to join us. So we have now probably the best part of the conference, and it's the time that we announce the winners for different contests, at least for now, and also say how we want to distribute these prizes. So let's get started. Shall I start my presentation? Are you excited?
Yeah.
Drum roll is ready. Is it ready? Aha! Very nice. All right. So here is my slides. Let's go for that. First of all, thank you very much for joining us, Sarah, another organizer, also Summit. So together we did this conference, and special thanks to Flutter community, Scott, Simon, Nash, and anyone in the Flutter community who helped to bring this conference to you as best as possible. So don't forget to subscribe here, or maybe here or here. I don't know where it is, but somewhere there. And like the video if you liked our conference. And do not forget, yes, and do not forget about Scott's Patreon things. If you want Flutter t-shirt, you still have a chance to become sponsor of Flutter community and win, or not a win, we will ship you actually a t-shirt. All right, so now let's move on to winners. First of all, our today's winner. So for the contest, Sarah, shall we start?
We shall.
Evgeny,
Drum roll.
Naval, ready? Excitement?
Yes.
Drum roll! Fantastic one. Is
Yes.
it 3?
Wow.
Stormy Forrester, we see you. I saw you submitted 3 entries today. They were all great. So good effort, and you are a winner today.
Thank you very much. We will reach you out.
Yes.
Next one. Drum roll. Oh, sorry, I messed it up.
Suraj, you win because you have a cute bird.
Oh.
Look at it. It's so cute.
Thank you for watching FlutterVikings.
It's a real life dash. Love it.
Yes. Next
Interesting.
one.
What's
Drum
going
roll. Whoa, this is a real Viking.
This
Wow.
was cool. He had his own horn.
You beat me, man. It was amazing.
Yep. Loved it.
Fantastic.
That
Let's
it kind of looks like it. You just fill it with some mead.
yeah. Good. So, drum roll. Next one. Woo. Fantastic. This is very nice. I mean, both from Nordic, right?
Yeah, he's
I think. Yeah, this is fantastic. So, well, this is a good job.
But didn't have the text, so he couldn't win. But he resubmitted today with the text. And
Oh, fantastic. Very good. So, thank you. And I think we have one more, right?
1 or 2. Let's go.
Let's go. Drum roll. Whoa, thank you very much, Mo. This is amazing.
We got all over the world people participating. It's great.
This
Okay.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
What
So,
is,
Sarah, you want to say like how we want to approach these winners?
okay. Well, for the social media contest, we know you through your social media handle. So we will be DMing you on Twitter or messaging you on LinkedIn, depending on how you posted. And so I guess please leave your DMs open. Or if you don't want to do that, you can email us at team@fluttervikings.com and let us know, and then we'll take it from there.
Perfect. So, but
Honestly,
this is not
this
the
weekend.
end. Yes, this is not the end. We still have a lot of winner to announce. Let's
Yes.
move on to the next one. So you did the quiz yesterday for Flutter full reference, right? I see that we forget to add from 11 to 20. We actually had.
It's on here. I don't know why it's not there, but
Okay, sorry, it's fine. It might be something wrong here. It's fine. But we do have, anyway, we do have your book reference, and we do have, booking reference, and we do have your ticket ID. So then we know exactly who you are. From 1 to 10, you can choose either a PDF or a paper copy. You can choose and we will send it over to you. From 11 to 20, once we contact you, we email you. We will start sending email from tomorrow, by the way. So you'll receive an email from Alberto, the author. So from tomorrow, you will, from 11 to 20, you also get a free PDF. So congratulations to all of you who participated. This was an amazing one. And our quiz today. So, all right.
Yes, we
Sarah?
had a quiz that was necessary because we had some last minute cancellations, but we had prizes to give away anyway, so we were happy to do it. And we got winners, lots of winners. There was a high participation, and some of you put in names that we cannot identify. So if that's you, please email us and we will get you sorted.
Very good. So let's move on to the next one. The AdSign Company app contest. You know that perhaps by now, but you still have time until the end of the week. So you move on, do your app, send it over. We will announce our winners for this contest next week. So you still have time. Take your time and do that. The prizes is €500 for the first 5 winner. Aha! One of my favorites. Build Vikings stream app. All right, so I actually don't want to talk about this. We have Nash, developer advocate from getastream.io. I want him to be on a stage shortly. Nash, are you ready? 1, 2, 3, and welcome, Nash.
Hello,
All
everyone.
right.
Thank you for having me. Such a great opportunity to be here.
Thank you very
So I
much,
hope
Nash, to
everyone-
be here. Do you want to? Yeah, fantastic. Do you want to explain about building Vikings? And people are impatiently waiting for Code Lab contest and the swags. You want to get started?
Definitely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So build Viking is our activity for FlutterVikings, and the idea behind Build Viking is you get to build whatever you want. Our only restriction is it has to be something Viking related or Viking themed. So yesterday you probably saw that video we posted of a Viking themed chat application. So you can build a Viking themed chat, you can build a Viking themed game. So you basically get to be as creative as possible and build whatever you like once it incorporates the theme Viking. So we're really, really excited to see what you come up with and what you build. And so far the submissions are looking really, really awesome. So keep going, and we can't wait to announce the winners next week.
All right, very good. So Nash, do you want to move on your slides you sent me?
Yes, definitely. So Build
Good.
Viking is not the only thing, not the only activity we did for FlutterVikings. The conference was so awesome and so big. We decided to do a code lab. So before I go into the code lab, let me quickly explain to you what Stream.io is for those of you who may not know. So at Stream, we're an activity feeds and chat company that provides services for you to add activity feeds and chat into your application. We have lots of different SDKs for different popular platforms, and we make it super easy for you to add an SDK and get chat and activity feeds up and running in your application. And it only takes a few lines of code. Majid, could you have the next slide, please? And of course, this is a Flutter conference, so of course we have our Flutter SDK. Our Flutter SDK is really, really great because it's not only our API, but it's actually pre-made components and pre-made widgets that you can use to add interactive chat into your application. So something like a message list view or a header that has the chat name and the last seen, typing indicators, all of that, it's all provided in our Flutter SDK. So I encourage you to go to our GitHub and go to our pub.dev page and check it out and try building something awesome. So of course, we did the code lab. Now the code lab, we loved our code lab because we actually took advantage of the tickets that FlutterVikings gave us, and to unlock our code lab, we made a really nice experience where you scan your tickets and you unlock the code lab, and our code lab gives you a really brief introduction of our services. It's just a small taste, the very tip of the iceberg of what you can do with Stream's Flutter SDK. So I encourage you to continue trying our code lab, continue playing around and adding Stream to your application, and tweet it to us. We'd love to see what you build. But I did mention we have a winner. We did say we were going to give away a random prize to someone who completed our code lab. So we have the drum roll going, and if we could go to the next slide, please. We have Manuel Labraca. We'd like to congratulate you for completing our code lab. And we'd also like to thank everyone who completed our code lab. Thank you very, very much. We enjoyed getting the feedback and the messages. Manuel, congratulations on winning. Someone from our team will be reaching out shortly to get in contact with you and send over your t-shirt and hoodie. So thank you everyone for participating.
Very good. Next one or done?
Yeah, next one.
Drum roll.
Drum roll.
1, 2, 3. Woo! Drum roll.
Let's see.
Oh, that was it.
Yep, that's it. Remember,
all right, then that.
Remember our second activity, Build Viking. You have until the end of the week to build a Viking-themed application. So once again, thank you, everyone. We're really excited to see what you build. So thank you. And thank you, Majid, and everyone of the program, organizers, moderators, and speakers. It was really a great conference. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, Nash, for joining us. So, bye. All right. So, but that was not the only thing. We still have a lot of winners to announce. Let me share my screen. The logo contest. We received a lot of actually emails. Thank you very much. We're so surprised. You need to give us some time. We cannot just announce anyone right now because we received quite a lot. We need to check it out, and we will announce them next week by other contests as well. So you still have time. Take your time. Send us those creative ideas. We would love to see them.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sarah, anything you want to add?
I've really enjoyed looking at the code pens we've gotten so far, and keep it up. I think
yes.
if you want, we can put all of the entries up on the website as well, and also have the winners there.
Absolutely. Next week, once we announce our winners, we'll probably update. We'll definitely update our website. All right, but next one, Microsoft Flutter Web App Contest. This is actually very easy. Take your time. You still have time by end of the week. Just build a very simple application, nice one though, because they're gonna judge that, and deploy it to Azure. You get swags, Microsoft swags, as well as the best one will get a dash. So you go ahead and take your chance still. And okay, that is duplication. Next one is the Codemagic contest that we have. So I'd like to introduce Martin from Codemagic. So please welcome Martin.
Hello, Majid. Hello, everybody. Super awesome to be here. You've done such a nice job.
Hello, Martin. So I've heard that you have quite a lot of good prizes. 2,000 USD, right?
Yeah, well, Christmas is coming up. You gotta get ready.
Aha, I am ready. Drum roll is ready. Your slide is here. Come on, everyone is waiting.
Okay, so we got 20 people that we're giving away $100 of Codemagic credits that you can use to build your Flutter app, and you can use CI on them. There's 20 people, so I'll go through them quickly. Here we go. First up, Maria Blum.
No, that's not good, Martin. Come back. We have to have drum roll.
Oh, okay.
Come back. 1, 2, 3, drum roll.
And it's Maria Blum. Congratulations. she got Smarty on our Flutter web app quiz. Then it's...
Oh, now drum roll!
You gotta do the
Yes.
drum roll for all of them?
Absolutely. This is the exciting moment.
Okay. Yeah, New Balance got Smarty as well, so they're also getting $100. And cue the drum roll.
Drum roll.
It's Nazim. They got Mentor.
Very good.
And it's Abhishek. Congratulations. And Mo. Congratulations, Mo. And Sonalika. Congratulations. And Asad. Congrats, Asad. And B. I think this is Elon Musk's next.
I give you $200 if you can pronounce this name.
Elon Musk's daughter, they named the weird letters as well.
Just kidding. Okay.
And it's Bharat. Congratulations. It's Temi. Congrats, Temi. And Andrea. Congratulations. And Ayedi in the city. Congrats. And Stormy Forrester. I think Stormy actually got a couple of prizes.
Yeah, he was very active during conference.
Yeah, it pays off. And Balwinder. And Chio Walker. And Frey Dumazi. Congrats, Frey. And Kodark. And Saad. And Nav Singh. And Motabar. That's a cool name. And that's it. And these were
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And good. Congrats to all of the winners. And thank you, Martin, for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.
All right. Let's move on. So, exciting moment. Well, we are getting to the end, of course, and we need to say a few announcements. Sarah, do you want to take care of that?
I think we've covered it mostly. Just if you won, we will reach out to you in the next few days. And if you think you need to email us because you don't want to open your DMs or you think you entered the wrong ticket reference, just go for it. team@fluttervikings.com.
Yes, absolutely. But if you're on Twitter, you haven't followed us, which we cannot tweet you, or DM you. I don't know what to say right now. You have to follow us and follow the Flutter community. All right, thank you very much. Last shout out to our amazing sponsors and supporters: Google, Stream, Microsoft, the AppCircle software, and the AdSign company, and Codemagic, as well as Manning for giving away the book. And well, Sarah, this conference would not be possible without our amazing speakers, right?
Absolutely. The speakers are the conference, really. So we want to say a huge thank you to every single one of them. And you will be getting a gift from us.
Absolutely. And that is a surprise?
It's a surprise.
Right?
It's coming in your inbox in the near future. So
yes,
look for it.
And once you get your gift, maybe you should share it and tweet it, and everyone knows what it is. Good. So let's move on. And final special thanks to, again, Flutter community and our amazing advisory board. You see a great program because of our advisory board. A special thank to Simon Lightfoot. So you have seen him a few times. A special thank to Lara. Lara Martin, she helped us quite a lot by building the program. Elliot from Flutterfire, and Daniele, you saw her yesterday for the diversity talk. Mohammed, you saw Salih, you saw him like 2 days ago, I think. He was speaking as well. And Robert, so the artist, Flutter artist. So a special thanks to them. Thank you for helping us to create this amazing program for the community. Do not forget to subscribe, like, or I don't know, wherever it is. Flutter community is awesome. We are all part of Flutter community. We need to contribute, we need to support, and expect good content and, you know, good things from them, for sure. Any things, Sarah, you want to add, or Evgeny, Novel?
Well, I think we're going to say goodbye, but maybe we'll leave the stream going so people can keep chit-chatting on YouTube if they want. So, yeah.
Maybe, but then, yes, Evgeny, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, just we have a bit of a lag, or this is the evening for me. I wanted to say that it was 3 awesome days, and yeah, that's it.
Very, very nice. So, Novel, thank you very much. Evgeny, thank you very much. Sarah, thank you very much for being an awesome moderator of 3 days. All of you are amazing, fantastic. You did a great job for the community. Thank you very much for doing that. And with that said, we need to say goodbye. A big thanks to all of our attendees, everyone who registered, everyone who attended, everyone who liked or disliked us. Doesn't matter. Thank you very much. The feedback is valuable. So we will reach you out by emails for all of your prizes, everything we mentioned. And we have an after party today. And we didn't forget this time. We added to the slide. So the link is very easy, bit.ly FlutterVikings-after party. Join us over there. I'll see you in the virtual bar. We can have some dance over there virtually. So,
move your mouse
and then we can say now goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. See you next time.